northwest flow has opened up again. 75 for the high, great this evening. Clear skies, 62. Friday, partly sunny, maybe a spot thunderstorm late Friday afternoon into Friday evening. Do not expect much, 78. Mid to upper 70s and sunny over the weekend. This is 97.1 FM Talk. Chief Meteorologist Dave Murray.
This hour of the Mark Reardon Show is sponsored by Gamma Tree Experts. Your trees deserve the best care. Call Gamma Tree Experts. This is the Mark Reardon Show on 97.1 FM Talk.
I should start talking here now as we get settled in our studio. I didn't grab my little blanket yet, though, Sue. Do you have yours?
Well, I don't know.
Ethan,
but
give us our blankets.
No. I have a sweatshirt. I stopped off. I've been moving all these T-shirts. Thanks, Ethan. And I thought, well, if I'm going to keep them, I'm going to wear them. So I'm going to just drag them all out.
Thank you very much. He just draped my my blanket over my shoulders. And, yeah, I have a hoodie on, but it's a thinner hoodie. So with the temperature in here at 66 on a regular basis, we have to get warm. Wait, the T-shirt deal. You lost me a little bit because you're moving and you're finding things that you kind of forgot that you had. Or
yeah,
what
and I thought,
deal?
well, if I'm not taking it to Goodwill, I'm going to start wearing them. So we've got random ones. I've got one on from 2003 from KMOV when we moved studios.
That's pretty good,
right?
I try to go through this. I'd love to be able to see how Fred does this process, though. Like, every few years. Well, I mean, maybe Joyce helps you, but every few years, you do have to kind of go through the closet and the drawers. And I'm terrible at this. And you say, well, if I haven't worn that in 2 years,
goodbye.
I'm not going to wear it, right? 2 or 3 years.
Got something sentimental.
Well, see, that's just it. So I've got some stuff that I kept,
like
and I thought,
call letters.
am I going to take this to Goodwill and have somebody wear? All I got was a T-shirt when we moved studios in 2003. I don't know, but I'm going to wear it when I paint.
Yeah, no, I have stuff like that too that I'll say, okay, if I'm doing some painting or things along those lines. But I mean, I keep a lot of stuff because I've admitted this. Like I was a shopper, and unfortunately, my daughter has this. I mean, this is you can't have, and I've said this before, and I think you know this. You can't have two shoppers in the family, right?
No, you cannot.
You're gonna bankrupt, right?
Yes.
So Becky's not the shopper. I'm the shopper. I'm less of a shopper than I used to be. COVID kind of killed it, quite honestly. But my daughter, oh my God, she loves to go to Ulta Beauty or what all this other stuff is, Sephora.
At 10.
Yeah,
I'm
telling
to
you.
Sephora at 10.
Well, yeah, which is bad parenting, I would say.
Yes, well, I wonder who's doing
terrible
that.
But what does happen is that because I've accumulated a fair amount of clothing over the years, especially when I was doing TV work, because then I have nice, stuff.
Yep.
And we didn't have, Fred knows this because he's been here in with the company with KMOX for 130 years. But we used to not be able to wear jeans at KMOX. Like there was, and then they did like
I remember that.
Then they did like a Friday, casual day. Well, then people took it too far. I always kind of broke the rules because I didn't really care about that. But there was a time, Fred, we were supposed to be a little bit more buttoned up. And, so I always felt like I had to have buttoned down. I had clothing from that. But if you go through my closet, and my wife will tell you this, like the amount of space that I take up in the, we have a big master bedroom closet. Okay. I take up more space than her stuff, but I still can't get to the point where I say, okay, I gotta, and here's one of the challenges. I've aged out of some of this stuff.
Oh,
and that's uncomfortable because you look at something like, 25 years ago, I'm in Rome and I bought this amazing leather jacket. I love it. It's like my favorite. I can't pull that off now. No. I can't pull off rock and roll, Mark. Like I don't think I could even pull that off 25 years ago. But you do get to a point where you're looking at some of your stuff, and I feel like I have cool clothing. All right, because I like Varvatos and a lot of the nice, brands out there.
Yeah.
But I've even given some of it to my kids because
you have to.
Yes,
at least you're self-aware. Some people don't know.
So when I go through the closet, Marie says, get rid of everything you want for Goodwill, put it in a bag.
Right.
I'll hand her a bag, like a Walmart bag with stuff. She'll come out of, her closet with like a huge hefty bag
well, yes.
full of clothing.
So you have more of a difficult time in parting with things.
Oh, yeah, I do. Oh,
okay.
I think we knew that.
I actually saw Jim, my neighbor, cutting his grass the other day wearing a Mark Reardon t-shirt.
Look at that.
So, but that only makes me think, like Sue said, I'm going to save that for when I'm doing yard work.
Right.
Hey, can I tell you something funny about that? So,
Yes.
and I'm like actually trying to discourage it a little bit, but there were 2 days, like a week ago Friday, and then so 2 weeks ago from tomorrow, I guess I could say, because tomorrow's Friday, right? And then also last Tuesday. So it was like almost back to back. It was a Friday and a Tuesday. My daughter wears a Mark Reardon Show t-shirt to school in 5th grade. And I'm like, okay, babe, maybe dial back on that just a little bit. We don't have to wear it every day, but God bless her for wanting to wear it. And those are nice t-shirts too. That's the thing.
Yeah,
really
they
nice
are.
T-shirts.
They're good ones.
Something fit her with your shirts?
It's an extra small, and is it a little bit too big? But yeah, she's she wears stuff that it's amazing to me. And then when I'm going in here to do the switchover, Brad and I don't even know what they were talking about, Brad and Ethan, but we started talking about cars. And my comment was, because Brad was referring to something with traction control on a car. He was making some analogy to something here in the studio. I have no idea what it was. But then when I thought about that, I instantly went to the puppy, because Max the puppy, who's now 5.5 months old, he's big. He's like really big. When you saw him, Sue, he was probably 3.5 months old.
Oh my gosh.
Like, so,
we thought he was big then.
Right. But he, and you saw his spots. But I have him in like the front seat when I pick him up, and I have a blanket there. And just in the last week or so, we've had the situation where I have to put the seatbelt in because he's setting off the seatbelt alarm. That hadn't happened. I don't know what the weight limit is for that, but that's happening. But my point that I was trying to make with Ethan and Brad is, and maybe it's just me, but I think we all do this, is there are settings on our vehicles.
Yeah.
Right. So my wife drives a Toyota 4Runner off-road, right? We ain't taking that thing off-road, right? It's just cool because it's off-road.
Right.
But there's all these buttons on there where you can do things, and I would have no idea even where to start to hit those buttons. But on my car, it's the same thing. And I feel like I'm pretty educated on stuff, and I like technology. But I bring the puppy up because he's big enough where he kind of puts his head in the middle where the console is, like where I would have my Diet Cokes or something like that. And then the shifter is right there. And there's 2 buttons that are right next to that. I have no idea what they do. I just know that every once in a while I look at the screen in front of me, where the speedometer is and everything, and there's a light that goes on, and it started me because the dog turned it on.
And so you've got icons you've never seen before.
It's not eject. Is it not the eject button?
No,
That's
but my point of that is, and I think this is true, and I feel like this is even true with, I sit here every day with my iPad Pro. I love my MacBook and my iPhone, but I try to read things on CNET or some of the other sites that we have, because when the new software comes out, you're like, oh, I'd like to know about this and I'd like to use it. But I guess the broader point I'm making is we all have things, whether it's, automated things around the house or our cars, we don't know exactly what those buttons do until you have to kind of Google it if it's left on. I've had to do this before too. I'm like, what is that? I do know that the check engine light, I know what that one looks like because that one came on in the last month and cost me a bunch of money. But anyway, that was kind of my broader point today on that. So there was an interesting hearing on Capitol Hill, and I know that you're a fan of RFK Jr. Bobby Kennedy was up there talking. Well, I don't know what he was talking about, because I think the reason he was there for the hearing was different than what the hearing ended up being. Here's John Cornyn, Texas senator, talking about how it kind of unfurled.
The Senate used to be called the world's greatest deliberative body, but you wouldn't have known that from the hearing today. A lot of shouting, talking over each other. What I was interested in is getting answers to a lot of questions about Senator Kennedy's, Secretary Kennedy's service as head of HHS, but that was hard to come by given all the back and forth.
Yeah, there was a lot of back and forth, and you're going to get that with a guy that's controversial. And the one thing that I would say, just being honest here, and Fred and I were kind of going back and forth on this, and it is what it is. But honest to God, his voice just kills me. And I know that it's nothing that is his fault, but as I'm trying to watch, I think I sent you a message that said, man, this would be great audio if it wasn't for his voice. We do have some good audio. It's tough to listen to him for extended periods of time, but it got hot today.
The sickest country in the world. That's why we have to fire people at CDC.
This is about kids being pushed in harm's way by reckless and repeated decisions to get scientists and doctors out of the way.
Senator, you've sat in that chair for how long? 20, 25 years, while the chronic disease in our children went up to 76%. And you said nothing.
You are citing data that you won't produce to the public.
You're just
and you
making things up.
rejecting
You're
science.
making things up to scare people.
Sir, you're a charlatan. That's what you are.
On behalf of parents and schools and teachers all over the United States of America who deserve so much better than your leadership.
Senator, they deserve the truth, and that's what we're going to give them for the first time in the history of that agency.
This was interesting. And I'm going to just say this because, I've had issues with some of the positions that RFK Jr. has taken. However, I don't know if the interpretation of a particular issue is accurate because the lens with which the issues are being portrayed is cloudy. And when I'm referring to that, I'm talking about the legacy media. I thought this was interesting. So Mark Warner from Virginia is asking some questions. He seems very outraged about an inability to have a number at the top of his head of how many people died from COVID.
You're the Secretary of Health and Human Services. You don't have any idea how many Americans died from COVID?
I don't think anybody knows that because there was so much data chaos coming out of the CDC.
Mr. Chairman, the Secretary of Health and Human Services doesn't know how many Americans died from COVID. Doesn't know if the vaccine helped prevent any deaths. And you are sitting as Secretary of Health and Human Services? How can you be that ignorant?
Well, here's what I could say. How can you be that ignorant, Mark Warner? Because I feel like I was fooled so many times.
Yes.
And, Dave Strom over at hotair.com said today, everyone at the CDC should be posed with this question. Can you define what is a woman? And if you can't do that, you're out. They fired the guy last week who put his pronouns, his identifiers in there and said pregnant people. And he was proud of that. So I don't want people like that at the CDC. And here's the problem when it comes to trust. And this is a major issue in this country. And I don't know how we come back to sanity, but the experts at the CDC literally handed the power to close schools to Randy Weingarten and the American Federation of Teachers. They thought that they knew the science better than the doctors. I remember when we all started in that first summer, Fred, I was listening and I thought it was excellent. Dr. Mark Siegel, who's on Fox on a regular basis, they had Doctors Radio on Sirius XM. They had extensive conversations about a lot of things related to COVID. They made that channel available for free for a long time because in the early days in particular, there's a lot of back and forth. We didn't know a lot of answers. I would admit that. There were a lot of people that were dying. But that was also about the time that we started hearing a little bit from Marty Makary. And Dr. Makary, who's now in the administration, one of the things that he said that I appreciated from the very beginning is what we were getting for months, at least 3 months, was only one side of the equation. We know that, by the way, now. This has been bore out in congressional hearings. And, Dr. Fauci and the team were all the only ones that we were hearing from. And so Dr. Makary's point at the time was, wait a second here. How about some, alternative interpretations of what's going on with this virus right now? And these are the same people who wanted us to, I can't believe this, by the way. I don't think I mentioned this yesterday. These are the people that wanted to mask up outdoors, even like when we're at the beach, when
and
we're
arrest
running.
People.
There was actually, this is not made up. I've been tracking this. There have now been 4, maybe 5. I can check today. 4 stories in the last week since last Wednesday in the LA Times full of COVID panic. You'd think it was 5 years ago. I swear to God. And yesterday, the headline included the word mask, included the words mask up, that they're encouraging people in California to mask up. Is utterly ridiculous what was happening. We now know that the 6 feet apart was pulled from 1918. And don't get me started on some other things that the government claims to be experts in, like climate change. And we're going to talk about that this afternoon. This is why, I'd be very curious to see what the younger people of America do in 2028. I don't want to fast forward too soon to the next presidential election, but you have a guy who's vice president in JD Vance, and this is an amazing tweet. And I'm so glad that he's calling it the way that he sees it. And he does things differently than Trump. I don't think he, personally attacks people. And if he does it in very unique ways. But here's what he said here. And this is related to what happened at this hearing today. When I see all these senators trying to lecture and, quote, gotcha, unquote, Bobby Kennedy today, all I can think is you all support off-label, untested, and irreversible hormonal therapies for children, mutilating our kids, enriching big pharma. You're full of shite, and he used the real word, and everyone knows it. And I feel the same way. That, part of the big issue in the last 5 years. And what happened is we have lost trust in all these government agencies because they deserve to lose our trust, because they lied to us. They made things up. They pulled things out of thin air. The hearing that should be taking place right now on Capitol Hill is about the kids of this country who've been put back for so long because of what happened during COVID. I talk about David Zweig's book all the time, An Abundance of Caution. We do hearings on that every day and talk to Randy Weingarten and the teachers union who were holding signs, "You're just going to kill our teachers" 5 years ago if we simply let kids go back into school. Utterly ridiculous. So I don't know what comes out of the hearing today, but it certainly was a lot of fireworks.
Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
Well, on the roads this afternoon, it's not too bad out there. If you are westbound on 70, moderate volume at Jennings Station Road, eastbound a little slow at Bryan, and it's also a little bit slow eastbound. And this is east of Forestell, kind of David Hochul Parkway, through the 70 and 64 split. More volume on westbound 64. This is approaching Hampton, but it goes all the way to the inner belt. There was an accident on 170 south of the Forest Park Parkway, and traffic is jammed both north and southbound through there. And they were not letting people ramp on to the northbound 170 as well. So kind of a mess in that area. Just avoid it if you can. And southbound 270, mainly moderate volume, but it stretches from Page down through Ladue Road. This report brought to you by Jerry Kelly Heating and Air Conditioning. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Jerry Kelly swings next day installs no matter how late you call. And because they work later every day, they're faster when your equipment just needs fixing too.
That's MVP material.
Yep, simple fix or a full install. Nobody gets you comfortable faster.
JerryKelly.com. I believe it was a week ago tonight. We had a great conversation with Mark Gelman from the Gelman team about the state of real estate here in the St. Louis area. It's always great to connect with Mark or Neil on the show. I talk about them all the time, and I recommend them to you if you're looking for a realtor. One of the things that really stood out is Mark saying that there are some unrealistic expectations from sellers in this market. Now, sometimes people are uncomfortable with the recommendations that a realtor might give, and the Gelman team is going to shoot straight with you. They want to make sure that you get top dollar if that's what you're interested in. Of course, if you want an instant cash offer, they can provide that as well. They have an amazing tool up on their website, which is thegelmanteam.com, where you can find out how much your home is really worth just by filling in your address. It kicks back a price to you. If you need to take it a step further and work with the Gelmans, they're there for you. They'd be happy to talk to you. 314-336-1991. The Gelman team with eXp Realty here in St. Louis. Online at thegelmanteam.com.
Rhino Shield is far superior to even the best traditional exterior house paint. Rhino Shield is 8 to 10 times thicker than paint and comes with a 25-year transferable warranty. Rhino Shield is the only ceramic coating company that has been chosen by Disney, This Old House, and 3 times on HGTV's Curb Appeal, where every episode is concentrated on unpainted brick, bonds and seals to stucco, wood, hardy, block, color lock, masonite, and more. No better product for those steel aluminum-sided homes that have become, chalky and tired looking. We coat sloped and flat roofs to extend their lives too. After 15 years, we've got a great reputation and a superior product. As long as it's affordable, why wouldn't you do it? Before you make the costly mistake of painting with traditional paint, you'd be best served to call Rhino Shield today. We are the experts and our evaluations are free. 877-25-RHINO or 877-25rhino.com. Tell them, ladies.
Don't paint, don't Rhino, go Rhino Shield. Never paint your house again. Rhino Shield.
Bold conversations, no apologies. The Mark Reardon Show, 97.1 FM Talk.
Yesterday, I played some of the audio from Malcolm Gladwell, who was doing a mea culpa on some of the trans, sports comments that he's made in the past. Jen Say, who's the founder and the CEO of XXXY Athletics, is going to join us with her reaction to that. We have a Thursday edition of Sue's News coming up. I will also, at 4:04, talk about the great pigeon heist of 2025.
Oh, I'm intrigued.
Oh my gosh, this is a crazy story that I'll share here after 4 o'clock. And of course, with Friday just around the corner, we have a Reardon Roundtable set for tomorrow. Jane will be here. Ed Rohde will be on the liberal side of the panel. Sean Flower on my side. He is the mayor of Eureka. Paul Hall with entertainment. I got to tell you about this catfish documentary that he recommended last week. Oh my god!
Did you watch the whole thing?
I did. I watched it and I finished it this morning, and that thing is nuts. Whoa. It really is. Okay, here's something that I read a couple of days ago. This is on NPR. You know it's got to be true. A group of more than 85 scientists have issued a joint rebuttal to a recent U.S. Department of Energy report about climate change, finding it full of errors and misrepresenting climate science. This comes weeks after the Union of Concerned Scientists and the Environmental Defense Fund filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration that alleges that Energy Secretary Chris Wright, quote, quietly arranged for 5 handpicked skeptics of the effects of climate change, unquote, to compile the government's climate report and violated the law by creating the report in secret. This is my favorite part. This is the winning part here. With authors, quote, of only one point of view. Let that sink in just for a moment.
Oh my
really,
gosh.
when you think of how ironic is that? Gregory Wrightstone is here. Wrightstone, I'm sorry. He's a geologist and the executive director of the CO2 Coalition in Virginia. Gregory, how are you? Welcome back to 97.1 FM Talk.
Yeah, really good, really good. DOE study that you're reporting, the report was excellent. And we finally got somebody pushing back against this narrative of a man-made driven climate crisis. So glad to expect very well.
Well, how comedic is it for them to make a complaint saying it's only one point of view when they have not allowed any other point of view for a couple of decades on it? I mean, the LA Times blatantly has a policy where they will not even, entertain any positions that, go from the mainstream narrative of climate change. So that just had to make me laugh. But talk about this report and what the report actually says and why they're kind of worked up about it on the other side.
Well, they actually drew everything in their report came from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is, but they I was an expert reviewer for the IPCC for the last report. Didn't have much to add though. They don't listen to us. But there's a lot of good science in this IPCC reports, but the only thing people look at is the politically driven. It's called the Summary for Policymakers, and it's because there's I think 40 different books basically of different science, and what they did was take out what wasn't really listed in the Summary for Policymakers and showed what the truth is. And the truth is that the science is not cut and dried. The science does not support this consensus of man-made driven warming, or that there's a consensus that CO2 is the primary driver of CO2 of our warming over the last 50 or 60 years. But Chris Wright at Department of Energy scheduled that. And isn't that chutzpah for them to say it was only one point of view? When that's when they've silenced people like me and my esteemed colleagues at the CO2 Coalition that are some 200 of the top experts in the world that are pushing back against this narrative. And we just, in a comment we filed just 2 days ago, written by Dr. Richard Lindzen of MIT and Dr. William Happer of Princeton, two of the most esteemed physicists of our time. They stick Lindzen there actually to an example of how difficult it is to get our voices out there. He and Dr. Happer have been trying for years to get published their contrary data. It's nothing's been disputed what they're saying. They just don't like the results they get. He reported from one journal, finally did publish one of his reports. The editor was immediately fired. The new editor was quickly appointed, and that editor sought out 2 other people to post rebuttals against what he wrote without him able to respond. And that's how they do it. If you allow that to get out, this contrary data of an Earth that's thriving and prospering, you're going to get fired. If you're at the university, you're going to lose your funding. And maybe get fired. We've seen it happen time and time again.
Oh yeah,
and it's just awful what they do to us.
Yeah, I can't remember the guy's name, but I had someone from the University of Colorado that was basically just shoved out of his position. Some of this is sometimes DEI related as well. So there's a guy named Steve Koonin who is a physicist, and he worked in the Department of Energy as an undersecretary under Barack Obama. But he also was the co-author of the report last month. And he went from a position where he thought that the warming was all caused by humans, but now he feels like greenhouse gas emissions have been exaggerated. And he says, and this was in the Free Press a couple of weeks ago, he says he started to dig more deeply into climate science in 2014 and discovered that it had, quote, a dirty underbelly. And he says, I started paying attention to the representation of the climate science in the media and political discussions and realized that things were just not being told straight. Well, some of us realized that even before 2014, I would say, and I think you would agree. But are there more people like Steve Koonin who have kind of come over and seen the light?
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And there are more coming every day. I think we're going to see a groundswell of people finally coming out. And I know Steve fairly well. We communicate nearly every week. And actually, if you don't buy my book, A Very Convenient Warming, he's got a book called Unsettled that he published 2 years ago that's really good. And so it's probably up there in the top 2 or 3 or 4 books published on climate science. And of course, my 2 books would be up there with them also, just saying. But Steve's very good. We see a lot of scientists that say quietly what they don't say out loud, that there was no climate crisis. I talked to a prominent geologist that has a show on National Propaganda Radio.
Thank you for correcting that. Yes.
Yeah. So, and I talked to him privately, and I said, why don't I said, do you really believe there's a climate crisis? He said, no, I don't. He says, but if I came out and said it in public, NPR wouldn't have me back on. I'd lose my audience. I'm contacting millions of people every week, and I think it's important. Well, you know what? There's a word for those kind of people: prostitutes. Well, they're not telling the truth. I couldn't do it. Hopefully, you couldn't do it. I don't think you would. We speak the truth. And he says, well, you got to. If I came out and said it, I'd lose my show, and so he really doesn't believe there is a climate crisis.
So what about, there was a story in the Washington Post, and we experienced this here in St. Louis. We are right now. We had a pretty hot July, but man, it has been beautiful at the end of August. Today is what I would call, so you know how Dave Murray refers to these days. I call them a 10% day. Like there are only 10% of the days that are this damn nice in the whole year. And today happens to be one of them, right?
Oh, yeah.
But we could be easily in the 90s in St. Louis at the beginning of September. So the story in the Washington Post was DC's coolest August in 25 years, driest on record. Will September follow suit? And they said that, there's little sign that the cool, dry weather pattern will reverse course. So clearly there's a difference between, and people point this out, between weather and what's happening with the climate overall. But we always have to queue up the story at the end of the year. It's the hottest year on record, right? It's the warmest year on the record.
Yep.
How is that going to jive with cool temperatures during the summer in many parts of the country, in DC and in St. Louis? They're going to have to come up with a new narrative on that one, aren't they?
Yeah, and it gets a little complicated. And part of it is, the truth is we have been in a warming period for it started warming more than 300 years ago. And we didn't really start adding a lot of CO2 to the atmosphere, anything that would actually cause warming to any degree, until the mid 20th century. So we had 250 years of warm. So we are in a warming trend. If that's the case, then recent temperatures should be warmer than those over the last 300 years. But that doesn't hold true if you go, I'm a geologist, I put things in the long-term perspective. And if you look back over thousands or even millions of years, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, we find that actually our temperatures today are cooler than the other periodic warm periods that we've seen throughout human history, which were the Minoan warm period, which was the Bronze Age, the Roman warm period, the medieval warm period, were all warmer than today, with very low carbon dioxide levels.
Nobody wants to talk about that.
And let me add, in my new book in particular, a lengthy section on the benefits of these warm periods, where just each of those warm periods I mentioned were hugely beneficial to humanity. The human condition thrived. Food was bountiful. Life was good.
Yeah, that's another dirty little secret. Sometimes it gets left out. The benefits of CO2, right? Yeah, exactly.
That goes exactly. And the cold periods were horrific. So it's just the opposite of what they're telling you. They're telling you heat is bad. we need to have it colder. No, history tells us that we should welcome the warmth and fear the cold. So they would call me a science denier. I would call them a history denier because they don't listen to what history tells us.
I like that. Gregory Wrightstone, thank you so much for jumping on here with me this afternoon. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
We've got kind of a mess on the inner belt. They've shut down northbound 170 really close to Brentwood. They're trying to clean up dirt off of the interstate, and it's really caused a parking lot back onto 64, and then southbound 170 slowing in that area as well. Now, westbound traffic on 64 is jammed, and that goes back to Kings Highway already. And we have eastbound slowing as you head toward 170, and then moderate volume westbound again at 270 before it opens up a bit. 70 westbound, of course, slowing at Jennings Station Road, and a little bit out at Highway K and then Highway A. The southbound 270 volume is from Page down through Doherty Ferry in pockets, but it's just moderate. Southbound 55 slowing at Bates, and we look great if you're headed into Illinois. This report brought to you by Barron Mirror Glass and Door. Simply the finest when it comes to mirror glass and shower doors. You can't find better quality, prices, or service than at Barron Mirror Glass and Door. They have the basics all the way up to the elite. Barron Mirror Glass and Door can't be beat. I'm Sue Thomas. That's traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Oh, I'm so excited about football season opening tonight. It's the Cowboys and the Eagles, and I want you to go to Underdog Fantasy. Download the app. If you haven't, this is a perfect day to download the app. Get signed up. I'm going to guide you into some bonus funds here in a moment, but you can play in Missouri. Underdog is the best place to select entries and win money all season long, and all you have to do is pick higher or lower on the stats of a player. So for tonight, I have Saquon Barkley in one fantasy league. I have Jalen Hurts in another. So I have a lot of interest in this game, but you can play the Champions game on Underdog and pick how many rushing yards, how many passing yards Jalen Hurts will get. Dak Prescott, the quarterback, of course, for the Cowboys. You can look at receiving yards for CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. The list goes on. How will A.J. Brown do tonight? And then you start looking at the games for the weekend with Mahomes and Travis Kelce. So all you do is pick higher or lower on the stats. You can play with as little as $1. You can win up to 5,000 times your cash. So download the app, sign up with the promo code MarkR. That gets you $50 in bonus funds when you play your first $5. Again, the promo code MARKR. Millions of fans have won billions making plays on Underdog. Will you be next? And will it happen tonight or this weekend? Underdog, make plays, win money. Must be 18 plus and present in Missouri. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Concerned with your play, call 800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org.
Hi, I'm Bob Kershaw with Retirement Advisory Group. Are you worried about market volatility? Are you concerned your money won't last you through retirement?
Hi, I'm Tammy Kershaw, and as a family-owned business, we are committed to protecting your retirement, whether you're nearing retirement or already retired. We have a lot of folks that aren't aware of all the new investment choices that are available, which give you growth and protection from losses at the same time. Are you aware of all the fees that you are currently paying? We can show you how to avoid those fees. So come in now for your free retirement review and get a second opinion on your retirement plan. And just for coming in, you'll get a copy of our latest edition book, Your Key to a Worry-Free Retirement. Let us show you how to retire with confidence.
We are proud to say we haven't lost a penny of our clients' money in 39 years, and we won't lose a penny of yours either. Let our family help your family. Call us now at 314-993-9494 or go online to retirementkey.com. That's retirementkey.com.
That baby's gone!
Cardinals fans, FanDuel Sports Network is your home of the Cardinals.
That ball was mashed.
And there are more ways to watch this season.
Holy cow!
Subscribe directly to FanDuel Sports Network to stream the Cardinals without blackouts.
How about that play?
Or watch through a TV provider.
Incredible!
Including DirecTV, Spectrum, Xfinity, Fubo, and more.
He got it!
Learn more at cardinals.com/TV.
Ball game! That couldn't have worked out any better for the Cardinals.
It's time for a $98 AC tune-up.
337. This portion of the show is sponsored by Jerry Kelly Heating and Air.
Bold takes, real talk, no apologies. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
So Malcolm Gladwell, I talked about this yesterday. He's an author, and he wrote The Tipping Point many years ago. Got a lot of attention for that. I've interviewed Malcolm a couple of different times, but this soundbite kind of made the rounds on the topic of trans, biological men playing against women in sports.
If we did a replay of that exact panel at the Sloan Conference this coming March, it runs in exactly the opposite direction. And it would be, I suspect, near unanimity in the room that trans athletes have no place in the female category. And I don't think there's any question. I just think it was a strange. The reason I'm ashamed of my performance at that panel, because I share your position 100%, and I was cowed. The idea of saying anything on this issue, I was I believe in retrospect, in a dishonest way. I was objective in a dishonest way.
Yeah, so he says he was bullied. Jen Say back with us, the founder and CEO of XXXY Athletics. She has a great documentary on Netflix called Athlete A. We talked a couple weeks ago about Generation COVID, which is a new film looking for distribution. Hi, Jen. Welcome back. How are you this afternoon?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. What's the context of that event that he refers to? Do you know what was said on that panel?
I do have a good idea. First of all, I want to know what objective in a dishonest way means. That's much of mumbo jumbo. But yeah, he spoke on a panel at an MIT conference on the science of sports, essentially. He didn't speak. I think he was the moderator, actually. And there was one person on the panel, which is the person he was giving this interview to, who was standing up for the protection of women's sports. And the other people were taking the opposite position. And he went along with the people that took the opposite position, even though he agreed with Tucker, Ross Tucker, I think is his name, the sports scientist who was defending the protection of women's sports. And I hope that clarifies that.
Yeah.
So he basically is saying here, I was wrong. I was afraid. I was cowed. I felt bullied. I'm sort of adding to what he said. And I did something. I said something. I behaved in a way that I knew was false.
Yeah.
It was not, it was not true. So that's kind of what he's saying. Now, I think it's important to keep in mind for people that don't know who he is, which is almost everyone. I mean, this man has sold 23 million books. He's this sort of quote unquote social scientist. I'm not sure I agree with that, but whatever. He's been writing for the New Yorker for nearly 20 years. His books have been on the bestseller list for 1,200 weeks. That's why you've interviewed him a lot.
Yeah, right.
This man has a lot of influence, and I'm sure he has a lot of confidence in his own intellect as well. And so for somebody like that to be cowed by the kind of bullying activist really says something.
A lot.
And I think for him, because I'm sure he has faith and confidence in his ability to defend the correct position, and yet he was still cowed because of how insane the activists are. So I think it says a lot that he admits that he was cowed and that he's ashamed of that. I think that is meaningful. There's a raging debate right now on is he just a total loser and a coward? Maybe. Or do we welcome him, because now he stood up and said the right thing. And I guess I'm sort of the mind that we need people like him. We need people to join the fight. And it can't be a purity test every single time to say, well, you weren't there from the start, so we don't want you. Well, that's almost everyone. Do you want to win? Do you want to win the fight? Do you want to win the war? You have to maybe lose a battle to win the war, whatever the phrase is. And losing the battle might be that you don't jump all over this guy, because the minute you do, and he is getting pretty hammered, then who else is going to want to stand up and join? Because they just open themselves up to that same kind of hammering. So I don't know. I'm sort of torn on the whole thing. I mean, I've never had a ton of respect for him anyway, so it's not like I'm surprised that he's jumping on board now that it's a little bit safer. I'm sure it doesn't feel that safe to him right now. He's getting pretty hammered by the activists, but I don't know. I feel like we need more people like him. And ultimately we want everyone.
And I agree. But what he said here was and I think you would agree, is very relatable about what the trans activists want.
What the trans movement is not asking for, they're not asking for, a place at the table. They're not asking for to be treated with respect and dignity. What they're asking is for no one to question the considerable physiological advantage they bring to the sport, and no one to question if they're going to win these races by 5 seconds. Suck it up. That's what they were asking.
Well, Jen, we've known that for a while, though I don't know why he had an epiphany here, but that's been pretty clear from the beginning.
Yeah, I don't think he had an epiphany. I think he always knew it, and I think he was afraid, and now it's a little bit safer because the movement is growing, and so he figured, well, now I'll just, say what I really think. But yeah, he's correct. They're not asking for equality. They're not asking for inclusion. They're asking for more rights. They're asking to take women's rights away to secure what they view as their own. That's unacceptable.
So I love the fact, it is unacceptable. I want to talk about one other thing related to this. So Chris Columbus, he made some brilliant movies, really good movies in the 80s, did the Home Alone movies, did the first 2 Harry Potter movies. There's this reboot on HBO, and there's a lot of the people associated with J.K. Rowling's books that don't like her position on the trans issue. And her tweet this week was brilliant, where she responds to Chris Columbus as saying, as another man who once worked with me declares himself saddened by my beliefs on gender and sex, I thought it might be useful to compile a list for handy reference. Which of the following do you imagine makes actors and directors who aren't involved with the HBO reboot of Harry Potter so miserable? And she goes, and I'm sure you've seen this, and she ticks this down. Is it my belief that women and girls should have their own public changing rooms and bathrooms? That's such a horribly radical position. Awful. Is it that women should retain female-only rape crisis centers? JK's been very, very, focused on that men don't belong in women's sports or in their prisons. But that was such a great response. But there again, you have an example with Chris Columbus being a complete wuss on this issue. And I wish someone, I said this yesterday too, I wish someone in Hollywood, you and I have talked about maybe someone in the world of sports that is prominently active in sports could come forward on this. And we know what happened with Simone Biles and all that. But somebody in Hollywood needs to have some guts. You have Chris Pratt out there being a little bit more, I think, brave on some of the political issues, but it'd be nice to see some people in Hollywood with big voices come forward and say, yeah, let's just call it like we see it. This is ridiculous, but they won't do it. That's just pie in the sky hoping, I think, on the part of me.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to see anyone with a very large platform. I mean, we have Rowling, so that's huge. And you know what? I'm going to side with her. I think the person who created the franchise, who wrote it, and it came from her own brain, is smarter and more analytical and braver than the actors who just repeat her words. So I don't really care what they say. I care what she says. But yeah, it would be nice. And you know what? I'll tell you this. At some point they will. There's going to be a tipping point, to cite Malcolm Gladwell, where the fashionable position becomes to say you always stood for the protection of girls' and women's rights. It will become the fashionable position. Think about it when you go back to gay marriage, and I would compare gay marriage. It's the opposite of what's being asked for here. In that instance, what was being asked for was equal rights. I just want access to the same, protections, opportunities, et cetera, that my straight peers have. Some of your listeners may agree with that, but I think that's true. Nothing was being taken from anybody else. This is the opposite. They're taking from girls to have these rights for themselves. But no one at this point, hardly anyone, says I was always against that. Most people, pretend that they were always sort of okay with it. So I think it's the same. I don't know who will be first. It's, wildly unpredictable. I certainly wouldn't have predicted Gladwell, but people will start. But I do think we're really quite far away. I wouldn't get complacent. I think the hit piece on Riley Gaines from last week in the New York Times is evidence of how far away we are, because that's what people are afraid of if they stand up and take the
by the way, how did I miss that? I didn't even see that. That was in the New York Times last week?
Yeah, there was a piece, and I'm interviewed in it, so I'm particularly, because I know everything I said, which is not included.
Of course.
It was a 4,000-word profile on Riley Gaines by their faith and religion reporter. Her name is Ruth Graham. That's a wild, just a hit piece from start to finish. It starts by kind of reflecting on the 2022 NCAA finals and describing the women on the starting blocks as indistinguishable. Well, one of those women was a man, and he was totally distinguishable. But it goes on to smear Riley as, a grievance-driven, offensive is her brand, grifter, who is, gross in her desire to win. She's too competitive. She's too aggressive. She has all these publicists when she gets interviewed. It's like, everyone with her level of notoriety has a publicist when they get interviewed. It's such a dumb flight. what about you go girl, loving and cheering for the women who are competitive and want to win in sports. I mean, it was so grotesque in the beginning, and that they left anything out that Ruth Graham, left anything out that flew in the face of that. My support of Riley and describing the way she behaves with all the families and how long she stays after every talk to talk to every little girl. There was another whole interview, which I shared on my Substack, with this woman from San Francisco. She's a lesbian Democrat, and she talks about how proud she is to stand with Riley. And Graham asked her, isn't that awkward for you since this is an alt-right Christian movement? And the woman who basically says, no, I've never been more comfortable with my politics. I'm open-minded. I listen to the other side, and I will fight with anyone who is going to fight for women and girls. But she leaves all that out.
Yeah,
because,
of course.
That goes against the picture she's trying to paint.
One of the things that I love from J.K. Rowling's post yesterday, and I've pointed this out a lot, and this is interesting when you mentioned the lesbian, because she said, is it the fact that gay people shouldn't be pressured to include the opposite sex in their dating pools, nor should they be smeared as genital fetishists when they don't? Because I've pointed out, I've had gay friends tell me, if you have a lesbian attracted to other women and there's a biological male that decides that they're a woman and you're not attracted to that woman, well, you're a transphobe. That's how a big portion of the trans activist community feel. So I'm glad, because some of this, the older gays, I say this all the time, they're as pissed off at some of this stuff as you and I are, Jen. Say, but thank you so much for coming on here this afternoon. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, take care, Jen. We'll see you.
Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
Well, on 170 this afternoon, there was an incident and dirt was dropped on the roadway, but it was enough that they had to shut down northbound 170 to get this removed. And that's what they're doing now. So if you are trying to ramp onto northbound 170, you really can't. And they're trying to divert traffic around it. It just is a mess. And that's southbound as well. Now, the lanes are open southbound, but there's heavy traffic behind it. And eastbound 64, they have closed down that ramp to northbound 170. Just avoid that area for a while. Now, westbound 40, because of all this, is jammed back to Kings Highway already. And then it slows again at 270. We've got 141 already lined up from Ladue Road to just south of 40. And there was an accident reported in the middle of all that. And westbound 64, some slow-moving traffic, especially Highway N out through 70. 70 westbound, slowing at Jennings Station Road, and a little bit at Highway K, and then again out at the 70 split. If you're headed into Illinois, things are fine. And southbound 55 is slowing at Bates. This report brought to you by Lakeside Renovation and Design. For over 25 years, they've been St. Louis's trusted choice for transforming homes inside and out, outdoor spaces, windows, siding, kitchens, baths, and they do quality craftsmanship with lifetime warranties. LakesideRD.com. I'm Sue Thomas. That's traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
So if you need a family practice attorney, this might not only be in the situation with a divorce. You could be divorced for a decade or more, and you have modifications to, a custody plan or a parenting plan or child support. Susan L. Ward can help you with all of these things. Now, one of the things that she would say, especially if you are approaching the end of a marriage, is don't put off that phone call. Don't put off the contact. Make sure you get in touch as soon as you possibly can. That will prevent you from making mistakes. They're committed to helping you with any kind of need that you have. And, when it comes to some of the follow-up issues, they can involve kids or grandparent visitation. They also, by the way, deal with domestic partnerships and domestic violence issues as well. Susan has a great brand new, spanking new office at 270 in Manchester, in that area in De Pere. She's very proud of that. You can easily reach her at 314-783-9400 or the website, stlfamilylaw.com. The focus on family law, the emphasis on you, Susan L. Ward.
Mark Cox here. Join us live Thursday, September 11th at Chicken Ellie's in Eureka as we support Focus Marines Foundation. They're helping post 9/11 veterans transition to civilian life. Learn more at 971talk.com/events.
When we started Neovitin back in 2009, we wanted to create a multivitamin that we would take ourselves. That's why we use quality ingredients in our Neovitin Original Formula multivitamin. With over 20 vitamins and minerals, along with our physician-formulated proprietary blend, you can be sure you are getting the highest quality daily nutritional support. Give Neovitin Original Formula multivitamin a try for yourself. Find it at your local Schnucks, Dierbergs, and online at neovitin.com.
If you're considering an annuity as part of your retirement plan,
We need to talk. Hi, I'm Bob Stockdale, Senior Vice President Investments with the ClearPath Wealth Management Group at Stifel and host of On the Money Saturday mornings at 11 on 97.1 FM Talk. Annuities can be a useful tool for some retirement investors, but not all annuities are created equal. Every week, we meet clients who own complex annuities that don't suit their needs and, in some cases, actively undermine their retirement plan. Before you purchase an annuity, get a second opinion from the ClearPath Wealth Management Group at Stifel. Requesting a consultation is free of charge. To request a free consultation, contact us at clearpathinvesting.com. That's clearpathinvesting.com, or call us at 636-695-2650. That's clearpathinvesting.com or 636-695-2650. Stifel Nicholas and Company Incorporated, member NYSE and SIPC.
He's Donald Trump's #1 enemy in Congress, Chicago Senator Dick Durbin. And now Dick Durbin has a new scheme, a government takeover of your credit card. Today, consumers have thousands of choices in credit cards, all with equal, strong security. But Durbin's plan is less competition and less security. And that means more risk for your credit and your identity. Tell Republicans in Congress, stop Dick Durbin's takeover of your credit card before it's too late.
Paid for by Electronic Payments Coalition.
Are you looking to hire? ZipRecruiter finds the best candidate for your job fast. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Mark Reardon, Sue Thomas. This is the Mark Reardon Show.
Oh, I'm still mad when I miss a story like what Jen Say was referring to, because I'm on the New York Times website every day, but for whatever reason, it was a week ago yesterday when this came out from Ruth Graham. And even the headline, Sue, because I pulled this up, I put it in my reading list so I can read the whole story. It says, the headline is, Riley Gaines finished 5th. Now she believes victory is in her grasp. And they go on in the first few paragraphs of this. You know, Ruth describes the situation with Leah Thomas and Riley Gaines and the rest of the swimmers on the blocks, and how, you know, she points out they tied for 5th in that particular race. But, you know, what's interesting about this is, and you'd have to go, I think it's about 8 paragraphs in, and this is what makes it so dishonest and ridiculous when they do these hit pieces and they try to manufacture, you know, I'm not going to say 20%, because I'm going to say 3%. The 3% of people that think it's okay for biological men to compete against biological women, but they represent it exactly the opposite. However, Ruth does have to admit, and again, this is like 8 paragraphs in, she says, Ms. Gaines' views, taboo in liberal spaces only a few years ago, are increasingly mainstream. It's hard to find a politician in either major party to offer a full-throated defense of the idea of transgender women playing women's sports. And in a poll this year by the New York Times, found that 79% of Americans oppose it. And, you know, it's like 95% of people. It's not 80%. If you pull this out, it's a ridiculous number. Most people see the fairness issue, which is why Malcolm Gladwell finally came out and was honest.
Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
We have been talking about the issues on northbound 170. It looks like they have reopened it. Hard to say, but here's the problem. There was an incident, and traffic is moving again. They have reopened northbound 170, but there was an incident. It got dirt all over the roadway. It was enough that they had to shut it down and try to get that cleared, and then they had to close the ramps to northbound 170. That has all been reopened, but we have a jam on anything near it. So westbound Forest Park Parkway traffic right at the Interbout. There was an accident eastbound 6440 east of McKnight. Slow-moving traffic there. And we've got 44 downtown westbound slowing in front of the Arch Grounds. 70 westbound slowing at Jennings Station Road. Other than that, it's about the usual volume. This report brought to you by the Diamond Shop. The Diamond Shop, making St. Louis sparkle for over 100 years. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
I take pretty good care of my vehicles. My wife, not so much, but I know that when I'm ready to make a change, and man, I feel like I'm on the last, non-EV with my
Oh.
car, which is kind of sad. But I know that when I'm ready, I can go to Alex Rosenberger and Gary Rosenberger at MasterCars Inc. and say, look, I'm ready to sell this car. What are you going to give for me? Or I can trade it with them because I have them source my vehicles and they do such a great job. Like, I'll just give you an example. The price points are all over the place. So there's a 2014 BMW 3 Series 320i. Well, it's an older vehicle, right? It's got 96,000 miles, 98,000 miles, but the price is $13,000 and it's in great, great shape. So they can put you in a car that's from, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 6, 7 years ago. You don't have to have 98,000 miles. I've gone to them before and said, hey, why don't you find me this vehicle with 5,000 or 10,000 miles? They've knocked it out of the park. So they do great work in Granite City. Used cars, new car caliber, mastercarsinc.com.
You all remember me mentioning my wife's thermostat being broke because of the, the change of women evidently have to go through, which is horrible. People called me asking me, how did she feel about me sharing her insanity? I did notice seeing her looking through a fork at me. So, hey, guys, if your wife, your girlfriend, your better half is looking through a fork at you, look it up. Why? You're going to be shocked. But she's still happy that she's got air conditioning. So you need help. You need pricing. Somebody told you need new equipment. Remember, Bart Inman, one easy number, Missouri and Illinois, 314-293-2600. But guys, look up wives looking through forks at husband. You better change your program around. God bless.
You're listening to Leaf Filter Radio, and the guru of gutter protection himself, Chris Coonahan, is here to take your most pressing leaf-related questions.
Hey, everybody, Chris here. I understand we have Ron on the line. Ron, where are you calling from?
Uh-oh. Ron, are you calling from a ladder?
Well, I was. I wanted to ask Chris what I need to do to get my gutters ready to have leaf filter installed.
Oh, Ron, you don't have to do anything. A Leaf Filter Trusted Pro will come out and clean out your gutters, realign and seal your gutters, and install Leaf Filter, America's #1 gutter protection system.
So I didn't need to get on this ladder?
Ron, Leaf Filter Trusted Pros are in your neighborhood and ready to help. Just visit leaffilter.com/radio to schedule your free gutter inspection and get up to 30% off.
Thank goodness. What was that site?
That's leaffilter.com/radio for your free gutter inspection today. See representative for warranty details. Promotion is 20% off plus a 10% senior or military discount. One discount per household.
You all remember me mentioning my wife's thermostat being broke because of the, the change of women evidently have to go through, which is horrible. People called me asking me, how did she feel about me sharing her insanity? I did notice seeing her looking through a fork at me. So, hey, guys, if your wife, your girlfriend, your better half is looking through a fork at you, look it up. Why? You're going to be shocked. But she's still happy that she's got air conditioning. So you need help. You need pricing. Somebody told you need new equipment. Remember, Bart Inman, one easy number, Missouri and Illinois, 314-293-2600. But guys, look up wives looking through forks at husband. You better change your program around. God bless.
KFTK FM Florissant.
An Odyssey station.
Robert Kennedy has elevated conspiracy theorists, crackpots, and grifters to make life or death decisions about the health care of the American people.
But Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says the CDC didn't do its job, telling Democratic Senator Ron Wyden.
Senator, you've sat in that chair for how long? 20, 25 years, while the chronic disease in our children went up to 76%. And you said nothing.
Though some Republicans on the Senate panel also raised concerns about the firing of the CDC director and criticism of COVID vaccines, Kennedy insisting again he's not anti-vaccine and that he's not taking vaccines away. The State Department will not be allowed to refuse to issue passports based on gender identity. A federal appeals court just letting stand a judge's order against the new policy. America is listening to Fox News.
Here's a tale of Becky. Didn't know what to do with new meds prescribed and no real cost clue.
She squinted at prices, that can't be right. Then tapped GoodRx and saw the light.
She could get a deal, book telehealth if she feels.
Learn about those meds without any stress. That one little app does all the rest. Even my horse downloaded it. Dang, save time and money on prescriptions.
Check GoodRx. GoodRx is not insurance.
Let's go!
You're still glowing, flirting, grooving. You still got it. But your immune system weakens as you age, making it harder to fight flu, pneumococcal pneumonia, RSV, and COVID-19. Vaccines are a key part of any health routine and help strengthen your immune response. Ask your doctor or pharmacist which vaccines you need. Schedule in minutes at vaxassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Air Comfort Service, heating, cooling, and insulation. Weather.
No complaints about this weather. Partly to mostly sunny skies. The northwest flow has opened up again. 75 for the high rate this evening. Clear skies, 62. Friday, partly sunny, maybe a spot thunderstorm. Late Friday afternoon into Friday evening. Do not expect much, 78. Mid to upper 70s and sunny over the weekend. This is 97.1 FM Talk. Chief Meteorologist Dave Murray.
This hour of the Mark Reardon Show is sponsored by Gamma Tree Experts. Your trees deserve the best care. Call Gamma Tree Experts. This is the Mark Reardon Show on 97.1 FM Talk.
Well, we have a Reardon Roundtable coming up in less than 24 hours tomorrow afternoon. Jane will be on the panel. Ed Rohde will be here as well. And then Sean Flower, the mayor of Eureka, with us. Paul Hall with some entertainment stuff. I'm telling you, man, I watched this. I've watched both documentaries, the Katrina documentary. I'm almost done with that. That's in 3 parts on Netflix. And then the Paul Hall talked about these last week. The Catfish one, Unknown Number, which is just crazy. And I don't want to tell people too much about this. Do you remember, Fred, him talking about that at all?
Yeah.
So this has to, you know what catfishing is
Right.
at all. So you're basically trying to lure someone in with fake premises, if you will. There was a documentary many years ago that I wasn't a particular fan of, which was about this. But in this particular case, again, I don't want to give out too much. And I would suggest if you want to watch that one, don't Google it or anything like that. But my goodness, is that a crazy story? It's nuts.
When you had Tim Summer on Friday, and he, told us that he actually lived, there in New Orleans
Yeah.
during Katrina. Did you ask him about that?
Oh, yeah. We talked about it quite a bit.
What did he
in the
say? Did
first
he say it
segment.
was just...
Yeah, well,
He got out.
He got out.
And
but-
left the cat.
Yeah, he had left the cat. He told this story because he was back after he was allowed to return home. And I think he said it was like the 4th or 5th day. One time he saw the cat and the cat's like, oh, F you, dude, you left me. And then the next day the cat was like, okay, we can make up. So that is definitely worth watching. And it will make you kind of sick to your stomach with the way that people were unfortunately treated. I mean, I'd like to think, first of all, I'll say this. When you have a natural disaster at that level, there's going to be certain things you're not going to be able to fix.
Right.
I'm sorry, because you had, tens of thousands of people that were looking for shelter, and the only place they could go was the Superdome. Now, having said that, I would hope that if something along those lines happens again, and the funny thing about, it's not the funny thing, but the thing about Katrina was, and we had the 20th anniversary last week, right?
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. The story was evolving 20 years ago today. Because all of the reporting, and they show this, and you kind of forget, New Orleans was fine after this thing comes through. People start coming out of their houses, and the French Quarter is where everyone's up. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it at all. Then the levees start to break. And the Ninth Ward. And so these areas that they were ignoring, because again, it's like coming to St. Louis and doing a live shot at the Arch. Well, there's a lot more of St. Louis, and the opposite happens.
Right.
Well, but there's the opposite happens when people hear about like a hurricane or something like that. You think, oh, the whole place is gone. Well, it's not. And that's basically what they showed, is that the French Quarter in many parts of New Orleans, they were declaring victory. Like, man, we got out of this stuff pretty unscathed. But then they started hearing rumors, and they started seeing that everyone who was being washed out of their houses as the water started to rise and rise and rise. Not unlike what happened in Texas. They were on their roofs. They're waiting for, rescues, and they're trying to make it to the interstate because they knew that they could get to higher ground. And there were, I think it was a 2-mile long line or something to get to the Superdome. And they didn't even realize that the convention center also had people. And that was in a different part of New Orleans. So it's really sad when you look at it and you take the whole thing in and you remember, that wasn't that long ago. It's just 20 years ago. Bush got a lot of grief for that. He deserved, I think a lot of people deserved a lot of grief in the way that they handled it. But going back to what I was going to say is I would hope that if something along those lines happens again, look, you can't tell me that the whole Chesterfield Valley eventually is not going to flood again. Now, we may be off the planet when that happens.
It may be.
But it'll happen. But if we get in a situation where we're pretty close to this in North Carolina, let's say, and I don't know what the result was, where people are stranded like that and they have no access to food and water, I would hope there'd be helicopters and pallets of food and water that we could drop into those locations within like 6 to 12 hours, because days went on and there were people that just didn't get the attention that they deserved. And there was politics, with that Ray Nagin guy and people trying to draw attention to themselves. But it's a pretty impactful documentary, and it focuses almost exclusively on African Americans. And in this particular case, that's appropriate because they were the ones, the poor people of New Orleans and African Americans were just hung out to dry. Literally.
They said in that, in this day in history last week that 80% of the city was flooded at one point. And it's difficult to recover from that. That's so much.
Yeah.
So many people.
And that the documentary really makes that, it brings the horror of that time back, because it was just awful. And there are people that they had to make a choice, get out of town or stay. And if you tried to get out of town, the lines were so long that there were people that were like, wait a second, I'm going to run out of gas. I don't even know if I can get gas. So I'm just going to hunker down. And at one point, the officials started even giving that as advice. If you haven't left yet, just do your best to hunker down and stay safe. And there were people that saw the water coming in at first, and it wasn't that big of a deal. Again, like in some parts, there was like a foot of water. But then when it starts to raise like several feet within an hour, and then all of a sudden you realize you're in your attic, and there was amazing video in this documentary of people that had their phones out that I've never seen before. And they're essentially doing some play-by-play, not unlike what you would see with some of the tornado watchers and the chasers, but they're basically talking about their experience. There's one African-American dude in particular, and they kind of chronicle his story from the beginning when the warnings come out, and he knows it's going to be bad. He's not denying it's going to be, he looks around at one point with his iPhone or whatever phone he has, and he says, it's hard to believe that none of this is probably going to be there when, when this is over. And then they take him to the Superdome. And you remember what happened at the Superdome when that storm came in. There were people in there, but then the roof starts, tearing apart, and there's water that's falling everywhere in the Superdome. And they had kept people only to one level. So they had everyone on the ground level and on what would essentially be the field. And there wasn't enough room. They put people into the seats just very randomly. It was horrible. It was just horrible what people had to experience, and what I'm sure a lot of people still have, trauma from this day. So I would certainly recommend both of those documentaries. Now, I have a topic here. I'm not going to be able to do it the way that I want to do it, but this is nuts. And, I always like to say my legacy journalistic outlets that I subscribe to and I pay for, the New York Times and the Washington Post and the LA Times and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. I pay a lot of money for all my subscriptions. And there are times where I go through my sources in the morning and I look at the headlines and I just roll my eyes. I'm like, okay. But there are stories that I certainly find that are interesting, and I would refer to them as really good reporting. And I found one today in the Washington Post. And maybe I'll have a little bit more time to do this tomorrow. But the headline is "The Pigeon Heist." How $1 million pigeons, this could be a movie, and it probably will be a movie, how $1 million pigeons became the target of organized crime. So you have these tycoons in China that turned, are you guys familiar with pigeon racing?
No.
Okay,
no.
Neither am I. It's a big deal. You got pigeons that are worth more than racehorses that are competing in the Kentucky Derby.
What?
And I'm not even making this up. Yeah, so this is a
worth
thing.
More than a racehorse.
Yes. Yes. Millions of dollars for these pigeons. Yes. And the story basically tells the tale of a guy by the name of Ton van Gaver, who is in Belgium. And they talk about how these Chinese businessmen arrived in the countryside of, this area in Belgium. with sports cars, ferrying translators, and bags of cash. They wanted his pigeons. Van Gaver had been breeding racing pigeons since he was 5 years old. It was a hobby he inherited from his father, who inherited it from his great-grandfather. The pigeons could find their way home. This is the thing that's weird about some of these birds, and happens with the monarch butterflies too. We don't completely understand how this works, but with the pigeons in particular, they could be hundreds of miles away. And sometimes in these races, you get to about 1,000 miles away. And what they do is they put them into a racing situation where they let them all go, and they see, because they have this ability to make their way back from where they were. And I don't even think that they know exactly how it happens.
Do they send them to a particular place and then back? Like, how do you know one didn't just go down the block and come back?
And this is all discussed in this story, and it's very detailed. But I can get into that when I do more. Yeah, but I don't know all the answers to that, because I read through this story this morning. What really stood out, though, is that they're talking about, like, this one pigeon named, I think I have pigeon sound effects too tonight.
Oh, good.
There was a pigeon named Armando. I kind of like that name.
I do too.
It sold for $1.4 million in an auction outside of Brussels. Then there's another one that went for 1.9 million. New Kim. So then what happened too is that this became kind of a hot commodity in China, and these mafia groups got involved, and they start going into these people that are raising these pigeons for racing, and they're stealing the pigeons.
Oh my gosh.
So it's crazy. Let me see if I can go down to the part where, because this story is very detailed.
I have so many questions.
I know,
I
right?
do too.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I can't. There's too many lined up in my head. So Chinese mafia are stealing these pigeons.
Well,
what are they going to do with it?
They're selling them to people for money. They're stealing the pigeons, and then they're selling the pigeons for money.
But wouldn't it be obvious then if you put that pigeon in another race?
Well, no, because the pigeons don't have like RFD codes on them to identify that pigeon.
Well, they all look different.
Right.
What if you
I don't know
have?
if they all look different, do they?
What if you have $1 million pigeon, and he doesn't come back?
Well, that's what happened with this one guy. What happened is they stole his $1 million pigeon, and he didn't come back. But let's see if I can get to the detail. I'm just telling you, this is like, reading this story is kind of like a documentary, because there's so many details to this, and I almost could guarantee you that Hollywood would see this and say, we got to make a movie about this thing. But I was trying to get to Sue's question, because if you page down on this thing, they talk about the race in particular and how it happens, and how they're kind of, it's a mystery to know why they go back and how they fly home. The story even ends this way. They say, it is increasingly likely, investigators say, that there will be only one way to reunite the birds to their owners, the ones that were stolen. They will open the cages and hope that the birds still remember how to fly home. And that's maybe the only way they're going to get some of these back. But they've got hundreds of birds that are missing. They did bust one of the rings. It was kind of an inside job with someone who was racing, but he wasn't an expert. He was very bad and wasn't really placing at all. But he was one of the guys that was in charge of leading the criminals to the pigeon coops and stealing them. It's a nuts story. I'll tell you what I'll do here. I'll post this on the old X, formerly Twitter, for people who want to see it, because it really is a crazy story. Maybe tomorrow I'll go into it just a little bit more detail and have some of those questions answered, Sue.
Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
Let's see, on the roads, if you are just leaving the office, westbound 70 really is heavy and slow at Jennings Station Road. And we've got an accident reported just past 270. Look for a jam that goes back through Lindbergh. Then some moderate volume at K and Highway A. Westbound 64, moderate volume as you go from about, we'll call it Kings Highway, out through McCausland, but then slow pockets between 170 and 270. Moderate volume through Chesterfield Valley and at Lake St. Louis Boulevard. Southbound 270, slow pockets Page down through Doherty Ferry. And southbound 170, well, even northbound, they're pretty slow between 6440 and the Forest Park Parkway. No delays on the bridges downtown eastbound, but westbound, there's a little bit of a slowdown. This report brought to you by Barron Mirror Glass and Door. Barron Mirror Glass and Door has the largest, most beautiful showroom in all of St. Louis, full of the latest, most custom designs. It's in Chesterfield Valley. There you'll see why they say creativity unlimited, quality unsurpassed. I'm Sue Thomas. That's Traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative. Have you been wondering if you've got enough money saved for retirement? Because it's difficult to know this unless you have a plan, a written retirement financial plan in place. And the way I like to think of things is I like to understand how they work. I don't like to completely give it over to someone else, but I don't want to do it completely on my own. I want some guidance. And that is what financial and tax architects will give you. They sit down with you and they customize a plan. They look at everything you've got. Let's say you're going to have a pension or it's just your 401k, whatever it is, they will look over everything, come up with a plan tailored specifically to your goals, but also to your values, whatever you would like to do. But they'll help you through this. This is how to reduce taxes in retirement. Here's how to avoid costly mistakes. So go to their class. It's Retirement Planning 101. Give them a call, 314-888-5101. 314-888-5101. You will feel better about retirement.
Don't get lulled into believing the IRS is getting soft. It's just the opposite. Hi, this is Lance Story with the Lance Story Law Firm. We are being told by IRS collection officers that their higher-ups are demanding that they get more aggressive than ever. So don't ignore them any longer. Level up. If you have unfiled returns, unpaid taxes, levies, or liens, call the Lance Story Law Firm today and let us get between you and the IRS. We'll protect your rights, including your right to appeal or even your right to take the IRS to tax court. Remember, IRS problems are legal problems, and they need to be handled by an expert attorney team who's done it for decades. So call the Lance Story Law Firm today. We're local. Our office is right here in St. Louis, or visit Lance, D-R-U-R-Y, law.com to schedule your free consultation with your local tax resolution law firm, the Lance Story Law Firm, 314-260-6120.
The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements.
It's time for a big Labor Day sale for my friends at Zero Res. Mark Cox here now through September 1st. Get this Labor Day special, 3 rooms, zero resified for $119. Plus they'll throw in a free hallway. And you can get $75 off your air ducts getting clean. Call Zero Res today. Here's the phone number, 314-474-2020. That's 474-2020, and ask for the 97.1 special. Here's the great thing about Zero Res. They can do carpets, tiles, hardwood, rugs, upholstery, air ducts. Every surface in your home can be zero resified. So it's time to call my cleaning pros at Zero Res. They can get it done. A 4.9 rating on Google, over 5,800 reviews. Call 314-474-2020 or go to ZeroResSTL.com. Spell it backward or forward. It spells the same, Zero Res.
We know there's a lot that can go on during one night of baseball. Long home runs, epic pitching performances, catches that defy space, time, and gravity. But what if you could get all of that summarized in a quick, concise, and at least we think, funny podcast that's under 10 minutes? Check out MLB.com's morning lineup. It runs Monday through Friday mornings on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you love listening most.
Fast-paced, fact-based, and never boring. This is the Mark Reardon Show.
Okay, I don't want to cut in too much to Sue's news, but a pigeon race involves specialized trained homing pigeons that are released at a set starting point hundreds of miles from their home lofts. So the lofts are, what they have. And then after release, they fly back to their lofts where their arrival is recorded by a leg band and a timing device. So what they do is they put the, the little band that has the ID numbers. So essentially they have an RFD thing on, but only if they're racing. Anyway, that's the detail on that. We'll try to get maybe the Washington Post author of that piece on the air tomorrow or next week. We'll see.
These allegations are deeply concerning.
Does the president have any comment?
We're not going to comment.
It's not clear messaging.
No.
And now, Sue's News. Brought to you by Sue.
I mean, that makes total sense. I don't know why I was thinking they left from home, went somewhere, and came back. That makes more sense. You take the pigeon somewhere.
Yes.
And then say, get home.
Then they fly back. Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
On this day in history, 27 years ago, it's only 27 years ago, in 1998, Google was incorporated by Larry Page and Sergey Brin. Now, they were PhD students at Stanford, And together they own today about 14% of its shares. They control 56% of the stockholder voting power through super voting stock. And its original name, you remember the original name for Google?
I don't.
No.
Backrub.
Wait, what?
Really?
Yeah, I'm really glad they changed
Did they
it to
ever?
Google.
Did they use that, or was that just like a test name they were
I'm
using
not
or
sure.
something?
Now, that
Okay.
one I don't know. Susan News has failed you on that.
What do you think we said before Google when we were like, oh, I'll Google it?
Okay,
What would you
back
do?
rub.
Well,
Yeah.
Okay, I'll back rub it. No, but what did we do?
I mean, you just search it. I'm
Yeah.
gonna search it
I'll
on
search it.
Netscape or whatever, right?
Yeah, the first thing I remember was Yahoo. I remember typing something into Yahoo in the 90s. But yeah, Google is all over the place. It's National Macadamia Nut Day.
Hell yeah.
Oh, anybody who comes back from Hawaii, my parents did.
It's like a requirement.
And they were like, oh, we love the macadamia. Here's the macadamia. And I thought, I'd rather have a peanut.
Oh, I like macadamia.
Yeah,
nuts, though.
see? But
And
I
those are
haven't been to Hawaii. This is my problem.
People ask me what my favorite cookie is. It's the white chocolate chunk macadamia nut cranberry cookies that I make. Those are awesome.
You know, you impressed me with that because most people don't go for it. That's an interesting cookie.
It's a good cookie.
National Newspaper Carrier Day, too. And I don't know if we even have those anymore.
Probably a lot fewer
Yeah.
in the St. Louis area.
I
right
never
now.
did it as like an official job, but my cousin, Jim Schwartz was his name. They had a newspaper route, and I remember going out with them, my cousins, Jim and Donna, and helping them with their route.
Was it like 5 a.m. or something?
No, I don't think I would have gotten
I was
up
going to say,
that early.
that doesn't sound up your
And
alley.
maybe it was an afternoon paper. They had those like St. Well, we used to have two.
That's
I'm
right.
being serious. You had the Sun
Yes.
Times and you had the Tribune. So
I got the
Globe and the
Sun
Post.
back in the day just to be different. Well, the new NFL season kicks off tonight with the Eagles. I still can't believe Super Bowl champion Eagles hosting the Cowboys. Now, we've got people coming out, moved into this house, right? And we've got two old grills from 1968 and trying to get them working again. And this place is awesome. Appliance Repair Center. And they got these things working. They had to order parts. They're coming out tomorrow. And this woman went into old books to find me racks that go on the top of the thing.
Nice.
It's really cool.
That's
Her
great.
name is Connie and she's awesome. But when she called to say they're coming on Monday, she said, "Go Cowboys." And I said, "Oh no." And she said, "Don't tell me Philadelphia or I might have to upcharge you." And I said, "Nope, I like the Steelers." So people are already ready for this.
Man, I got to go all in on the Eagles because I have Saquon on one fantasy team and Jalen Hurts on another. So I need production from the offense tonight of the Philadelphia Eagles.
And in case there's any doubt, a new poll found that, yes, football is still America's favorite sport. It's not even close. 48% of Americans follow football at least a little bit. That's almost 20 points higher than second place. The top 10 sports, number one is football. That includes NFL and college. So if you somehow only follow Canadian football, I suppose that would be included as well.
Australian rules.
Yeah,
football?
right. Whatever that is. Baseball, of course, number two at 29%. Basketball is tied with baseball at 29%. And then hockey is 12%. Soccer also 12%. Then you go golf at 11%, auto racing at 10%, tennis at 9%.
Pigeon racing, where does that
Pigeon
come in?
racing is not listed. That is a shock to us all. MMA at 8% and wrestling at 8%. Yeah, and by the way, wrestling has the most haters,
Soccer?
apparently.
I'm sorry, I missed it. Where was soccer?
12.
12?
Yeah.
Same as hockey?
Yeah, kind of. So that's why we've got both of those here. Anyway, a third of Americans say they don't follow any of these 10 sports. Okay. None?
It's weird. It's weird for me because like my kids don't care about sports at all. Like both
Nothing?
boys. Not really.
That's
Like
interesting.
Evan
'cause
got
you're
into the NBA for a little bit because, he's in Houston, but I always joke with them, and when they're coming in town for the holidays, they know that the TV is set for football, but yeah, they just don't have an interest. It's weird.
It is kind of weird, especially since you're so into it.
Yeah, and with me, I think my boys just fake like they like it.
Really?
When I
Do they
mention something-
really?
Yeah, they're not big sports fans.
Oh, that's funny. But they always buy you ticket. Do your kids get you
Well,
sports
yeah,
things?
but they don't have to go with me.
Oh, well, that's true.
Well, they'll give me for gifts. They'll do Mizzou stuff and Chiefs gear, yeah, things like that.
Huh?
But I mean, to sit in what they would never even maybe even understand. I will guarantee that Alexa Reardon, my 10-year-old, knows far more about the rules of both football and baseball than my boys who are in their 20s. I guarantee it's not even close.
A new survey has found that 1 in 8 Americans are overthinkers. I think we've got a few in the studio. I'm just going to say. The average person second guesses 41% of their daily decisions. Fred, do you do that much?
No.
I was going to say, you just got to go for it.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. But I don't guess that much.
Okay. What about you?
I don't think so, no. I'm very confident. I'm narcissistic and confident in my positions. Are you kidding me?
We tend to overthink, but not second guess in this place.
That's not true, though. If I'm like at the store and I'm like, oh, do I get this or that? I spend way too much time figuring out whether, is this price effective?
My gosh. Yes, Fred, that's what they're saying. The average person makes about 50 decisions in a day, which is roughly 1.5 million choices in a lifetime. But 27% of people admit they're regularly stressed over simple decisions like anxiety at the supermarket.
Wow.
And that was the exact thing. Are you worried that you're not getting the right thing?
Yeah. But I still love it.
I get texts that say, where are the mushrooms or whatever? And I'm like, oh, for crying. Okay, well, when you walk in the store, they're on the left.
Are they that hard to find?
Yes. And finally, in Sue's News, we have today's random fact. Usually finds them. Florida is the flattest state in the U.S. Now, Kansas has the reputation for being the flattest state, but it came in 7th. It's actually Florida that is the flattest state. So that's good trivia for you.
That is.
And that's it for Sue's News.
Yeah, who would have guessed that? That's very interesting. I think a lot of people, I've said this before, a lot of people think Missouri is just all flat, right? Especially if you've been here to St. Louis, and nothing could be farther from the truth.
I ran the Kansas City half marathon. That thing was hilly because I thought, this won't be. It was a hill fest.
Yeah, you betcha.
I'm Chad Robinson with Your Money Now. Spirit Airlines is ending service in a number of U.S. cities this fall. Today, United Airlines put on sale a slew of new flights in cities where Spirit currently operates, like Orlando, Las Vegas, Houston, Chicago, and its home base in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. In October, Spirit is ending routes in Albuquerque, Salt Lake City, Oakland, Sacramento, San Jose, and San Diego, to name a few. Legendary Italian fashion designer Giorgio Armani has died, according to a company announcement. Armani had reportedly taken ill as of late, canceling catwalk appearances at Men's Fashion Week in June for the first time in his career. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni paying tribute, calling him an icon. He was 91. On Wall Street, stocks were higher today, with the Dow gaining 350 points, the S&P 500 gained 53, and the Nasdaq grew by more than 200. That's Your Money Now.
$5,000. That's the average amount of money people in the U.S. are now spending on gas in a year. $5,000. That's crazy. If you drive, you have to download Upside, the free app that gives you cash back every time you get gas. That's right. You can earn real cash back with Upside just by buying the gas you're already buying. You can literally start earning cash back today.
I use Upside every time I fill up, and I've already made around $300.
You're putting gas in your car anyway. Why not get real cash back? If you like free money, download Upside.
I'm saving the cash I earn from using Upside to help pay for a vacation later this year.
Download the free Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code COOL to get an extra 25 cents per gallon on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code COOL for a 25 cents per gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code COOL for a 25 cents per gallon bonus.
Hey, let's talk about Banner Construction and some great stuff that they can do for you with some amazing products like Pella replacement windows or James Hardy fiber cement siding. You can probably tell, and this is a great day because we don't have the air conditioning on. We're probably going to pop the AC back on next week as it gets a little hotter. And maybe you've noticed this either during the heat of summer or the cold of winter, that your windows aren't quite doing what they should do when it comes to energy efficiency. So let's look at some beautiful Pella replacement windows and doors, and do it with one of the most trusted remodeling contractors in all of St. Louis. They've been doing it since 1993, Banner Construction. So whether it's James Hardy siding or premium windows like Pella, that's where you turn. A free in-home consultation is just a phone call away. 314-569-1050. The website is great. bannerconstruction.com, and have a banner day.
Accidents can happen in the blink of an eye, especially in a busy city like St. Louis. Whether you're a rideshare driver or passenger, injuries can leave you feeling lost, confused, and unsure of where to turn. At Kaufman Townsley, we understand. We're from here. We live in St. Louis, and we know what it takes to fight for the rights of our neighbors. We're here to help you through the difficult time with the experience and care you deserve. Kaufman Townsley, real people, real results. Call 314-500-5000. That's 314-500-5000.
Do you have $10,000 or more in credit card debt? Are you barely getting by making minimum payments? With credit card debt reaching all-time highs, National Debt Relief is letting everyone know about great debt relief options now available to help people with overwhelming credit card debt. These options may reduce a large portion of your credit card debt. Get a free debt relief consultation when you call 800-586-4040. 800-586-4040. 800-586-4040.
It's time for a $98 AC tune-up.
And this portion of the show is sponsored by Jerry Kelly Heating and Air.
From Belleville to Bridgeton, 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Congressman Jason Smith coming up after the top of the hour. He is, of course, the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee. They're doing a little bit of a rebranding on the big, beautiful bill. We'll talk to Jason about that. I know he spent some time in the district, as did all members of Congress in the last few weeks before they headed back last week. August was kind of the recess period. We have a roundtable tomorrow. Jane Duker on the panel. Ed Rohde will be here, and Sean Flower, the mayor of Eureka. We'll have Paul Hall in the 4 o'clock hour at Entertainment, Cusimano, and Brian Kilmeade with a rare Friday appearance tomorrow here on 97.1 FM Talk. So a couple of months ago, I was actually driving in to the station, and I heard an interview with Rick Perry, the former governor of Texas, on Fox News, and he was talking about Ibogaine, which he had just previously written an op-ed about in the Washington Post. And it was interesting because the state of Texas, Ibogaine is this extract of an ancient African shrub that has been used in Mexico, not here yet. We're trying to see if we can get it to be legal in the U.S. to alleviate addiction, brain trauma, PTSD. A lot of soldiers, people who have come back from war, have gone to Ibogaine treatment. So when I talked about that on the air, and I had someone that was connected with the organization in Texas on, and I forgot his name at the time, but Eapen Thampy, who is the founder and the president of Great State Strategies, reached out because he heard that discussion, and he's someone who is here in Missouri doing some work on this particular issue. And Eapen, we've never met in person. I know we've connected on text and email. Thank you for coming in studio and doing this in person this afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's great to be back in St. Louis.
So how would you, we were catching up a little bit. You're from here, but then you went to Mizzou and you spent some time in Columbia even after you graduated. Now you reside on the Kansas City side of the state. But you would describe yourself as someone who is, the bio that I have says that you're a visionary and a leader in multiple emerging fields, including marijuana reform, drug policy, criminal justice, et cetera, right? So on the Ibogaine front, how do you get involved and how would you describe that?
So Ibogaine is probably the most powerful psychedelic therapy there is. It's a very powerful medicine, should be approached with a lot of caution. Unfortunately, it's illegal in the United States right now, but we're working to advance clinical research with the goal of getting the FDA to authorize this therapy down the road. It has tremendous benefits from, it is the breakthrough drug we've been looking for opioid addiction and methamphetamine addiction. Somewhere between 80 and 85% of individuals who with opioid addiction who do an Ibogaine treatment get completely off clean.
Isn't that amazing?
No withdrawal.
Yeah.
It's and with 2 treatments, that number goes up to like 98%. Has this tremendous curative and restorative and healing powers. There was Dr. Nolan Williams from Stanford University did a study of, I think, 30 Special Forces veterans with traumatic brain injury. And this therapy literally was curative in, I think, a large part of that study where, literally you have these physically damaged brains that are regrowing themselves. This medicine puts the brain in a state of what we call neurogenesis, which is allows the brain to grow new neurons and create new connections and rebuild damaged brain infrastructure.
But because it's a psychedelic and it's not legal, it's not approved by the FDA, people get nervous about that, right? Which was what was so interesting about Governor Perry's op-ed, because he even admits from the get-go, look, this sounded wacky to me at first, but then I saw the benefits, and I saw the real benefits of people who have gone to Mexico and with one treatment come back with very little problems when it comes to the PTSD and things that they've experienced.
Yeah, my friend and colleague, former Missouri State Representative Ron Hicks, he was a Republican in the Missouri House from St. Charles. He actually went down to Mexico in May for an ibogaine treatment. He had he'd served in the Navy and had some childhood trauma issues as well, but he goes and does this therapy, and I don't know if it's from his wartime service as a Navy contractor, but he had ringing in his ears for 25 years, tinnitus, right?
Oh, wow.
Completely wiped out. He's was able to address the trauma issues that have caused him PTSD and address that, and it's been transformative for his life. And we're working together with Brian Hubbard and small group here in Missouri to push Missouri forward. So what needs
and
to happen?
how do we do that? Because this is where, to me, I'm very, and I think you sense this from the discussion that I had, I'm very open-minded to some of this stuff. And I know that there have been efforts, and this sounds weird to people in the Midwest when you hear about some of the wacky stuff they do out on the West Coast with microdosing of, psilocybin or something like that, which also has benefits. But this is one that really deserves attention. It deserves. This is what Texas is doing. They're spending $50 million to research this and try to get it, to be FDA approved. They make it very clear. Governor Perry made it very clear, and you referred to this even a few minutes ago, that it's a very, very strong drug. It needs to be medically supervised, right? It's not something you take home and you do yourself. So this is a process. But how do you get it? Because it's still a process that could take literally decades, right?
So what Governor Perry down in Texas did with the coalition Texas, with including the Grunsell Foundation, which is based out here in St. Louis, and the VFW and the Texas Mental Health Coalition and other groups, what Texas is doing is putting $50 million into the pot to jumpstart clinical research for FDA trials in the United States, right? Now it takes, maybe 500 million or more to get through the FDA process. So what we're working on is bringing other states in to put, money into that pot. I think Arizona just allocated 5 million with another 5 million private match. And, our goal next legislative year is to ask the state of Missouri to put some of maybe our opioid settlement dollars into this fund to research ibogaine. Now, at some point, if you get past certain benchmarks in the clinical trial process, the FDA can create what's called a compassionate use authorization or an emergency use authorization. There's various pathways to fast track these therapies, which, I would probably argue to you that in our state and maybe in our country, the opioid and methamphetamine crises are probably your greatest public health issues.
I don't think that's wrong at all, right? Yeah. And we barely, we're to the point now where we barely even talk about that.
Yeah, and if we can put a therapeutic, therapy out there that can help exit people from opioid or methamphetamine addiction, we will save lives immediately.
So when Governor Perry wrote about this, I'm going to just kind of recount some of this in the Washington Post. He says, I first heard about the drug from Morgan Luttrell, a Navy SEAL and a combat veteran who was elected to Congress in 2022. He learned about other SEALs traveling to Mexico to undergo an alternative treatment for trauma and addiction, something called ibogaine. When he told me about it, I cautioned him. Like many people, I thought I knew what psychedelics were. They were dangerous, something to stay far away from. I grew up during the Nixon era when the message was clear: drugs are bad, psychedelics will ruin your life, and the only responsible path is total avoidance. But he says, I've come to realize how wrong that narrative was. That fear-based messaging kept us from exploring treatments that could have saved countless lives. And he talks about how Morgan goes to Mexico for ibogaine, and when he comes home less than a week later, he's clear, he's calm, he's centered. Governor Perry says, in a way that I'd never seen before, he found a path forward from the psychological wounds he had been dealing with for years. Then he watched his twin brother, Marcus Luttrell, who's better known because of the book and the movie Lone Survivor, go through the same experience. And I didn't know this, but Governor Perry explains that Marcus had lived with them at the governor's mansion after he came back from war. And this was a guy that was in pain from injuries. He was dependent on opioids just to get through the day. He drank a lot. He used a lot of nicotine, and he had all this grief, trauma, and survivor's guilt. So he goes to this clinic in Mexico, and Governor Perry admits he came back completely changed. He doesn't need opioids. He hasn't touched alcohol. He quit chewing Copenhagen, and he found peace. Now, not every story is going to be perfect, Eapen, and there's probably side effects to Ibogaine, like there's side effects to anything else. But these are pretty dramatic things that are happening.
Yeah, Ibogaine creates an extraordinary state of neuroplasticity and neurogenesis. So you have the opportunity to physically heal your brain and nerve damage, and there's other aspects of this that are valuable for healing purposes in the body. But there's also a aspect of this that I believe is spiritual. You think about folks with addiction, right? You have a physical addiction, like with opioids, right? And if you have a strategy or therapy to help someone leave that addiction, right? I've come to believe a lot of addiction is rooted in existential despair, spiritual isolation, right? And Ibogaine and other psychedelic therapies has this aspect that it is possible. In fact, it is often something that you hear people talking about, is this reconnection with their inner divinity, the ability to feel love again, to experience love again, to feel the love, the divine love of the Creator, and being able to reconnect to other human beings. And I think that's, beyond the physical healing, that seems to be
that's interesting.
Most transformative part of this therapy, because look, if you get someone off of an addiction, right, but they have nothing to live for, right? If they're isolated socially and spiritually, they just go right back. Like there's nothing, it's a lot of addictions are just ways to cope and numb psychic or spiritual or emotional pain or trauma, right? And so being able to have a therapy that allows you to access that fundamental aspect of healing, not just the mind, but and the body, but also the spirit, is very powerful.
Yeah, that's interesting. So where are we at this point, and how can people, there's going to be people out there that may want to help. I told you reached out to me. I certainly want to give attention to this. I know some pretty important people in Missouri, but what's maybe the next step here in our state?
So right now I'm working to put together a coalition of veterans, members of law enforcement, and other advocates who support access to this therapy. And stay tuned. We can probably do a follow-up here in a month or two.
Yeah, let's do it.
I would suggest, if people want to know more about this therapy and this movement, I would go send them to the to Americans for Ibogaine. There's which is the website for this nonprofit that is promoting this nationally, and that's with Governor Perry and Brian Hubbard. And that website is americansforibogaine.com, and you spell Ibogaine Ibogaine.
Yeah, pretty easy. Well, Eapen, thanks for coming in here and talking to me and the audience about this, because I found it fascinating when I heard Governor Perry on Fox, and I pulled up that op-ed and then I talked about it and had Brian on. And I just think it's an interesting issue. And if there's benefits to be had, people need to be open-minded. And I think that we're in a point now because typically, and this is why Governor Perry's entrance into this issue is fascinating. Typically, you go back even probably a decade, certainly go back 2 decades, the dividing lines are clear. Republicans ain't going to go for this at all, right? No way. It's not even on the table. But that's different now. And I think Nick Shore is a good example of this in the state Senate. Nick's been very active on the cannabis issue. And there are a lot of people on my side of the table that are very open-minded and, want to get creative with solutions moving forward to help people, I would say.
Yeah, I mentioned I've been working with the former state representative Ron Hicks, who did Ibogaine therapy at Transcend Ibogaine Clinic in Cancun. And then another gentleman locally I'm working with is my friend Trey Warren. He's a retired Navy fighter pilot, flew F-14s and F-18s. And you think about, slamming that plane down on the deck of an aircraft carrier and the concussive impact that has over time on your brain. Trey,
can't even imagine. Yeah,
Trey had some very serious issues that he was dealing with when I met him, and then he went to another Ibogaine clinic, Ambio, I believe in February, and it is transformative. It's just seeing him before and after.
Dramatic. Yeah, really interesting. Eapen Thampy, thank you so much. And maybe we do this again. We bring Ron or somebody else back who's had the treatment. I think that could be interesting.
Yeah, I'll bring. I'll probably connect you with Tracey since he's local, and Ron is now the Veterans Care Coordinator for Transcend Eye Bagging Clinic down in Cancun. So he's kind of back and forth.
Great to meet you in person. We'll do it again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
We've got some volume out there on westbound 70 at Jennings Station Road, kind of as you approach that area, and a little bit past the airport. Then some moderate volume out at Highway A. Westbound 64, that's a slow go, Kings Highway. Now, this is in pockets, but it goes all the way out through 270, mainly moderate. Same thing through Chesterfield Valley, a little bit at Highway N. Southbound 270, slow pockets. Page down through Doherty Ferry. We've got southbound 170 slow today, anywhere from Olive through 64. And southbound 55 is slowing, especially at Bates. Now, there's a lineup eastbound headed for the Poplar Street Bridge, but once you get to the bridge itself, it's really not that bad. I'm Sue Thomas with traffic. And it is 4:47 and 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
So excited that I can go home tonight and watch football, and the Chiefs play tomorrow night. Then you got college football on Saturday, but I also am excited about Underdog Fantasy. And if you have not downloaded the app, you can play in Missouri. I want you to do it tonight with the promo code MarkR, which is going to get you some bonus funds that will be in your account. I'll explain that here in more detail in a second. But with football being back, Underdog is the best place to select entries and win money all season long. It's so simple, too. If you go on tonight, you'll see the game between the Eagles and the Cowboys. You just have to pick on a particular player, whether they're going to go higher or lower on their stats. So for Saquon Barkley, will he have more than 96.5 rushing yards? Will he get to 100 tonight? Take, maybe 100. You can take under that amount as well. Dak Prescott as the quarterback of the Cowboys, how many passing yards? You do this with all the players. You can mix and match sports as well. So you can make some selections with football, others with baseball. The U.S. Open is going on right now. You can play with as little as $1 and you can win up to 5,000 times your money. So download the app, sign up with the promo code MarkR. That will get you $50 in bonus funds as soon as you play your first $5. So you get the extra $50. Again, the promo code is MarkR. Millions have won billions on Underdog. You could be the next one. Must be 18 plus and present in Missouri. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Concerned with your play, call 800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org.
Scott Jennings here. I'm excited to be part of the St. Louis conservative conversation, cutting through the noise with unfiltered common sense.
Scott Jennings.
Weekdays at 8 p.m.
on 97.1 FM Talk.
I hear from sellers all the time that they fear they have missed out on the selling market. They are so relieved to learn September, October, and November are strong selling months. With low inventory and hopefully lower interest rates, this fall will be a hot one for real estate. I'm Christina Straight, owner of Straight Realty. You may have heard me say, why pay more than 4 for years? Now it's why pay more than 2, saving you even more money. Call me 314-441-4444. And remember, why pay more than 2?
Straight Realty is a licensed broker in the state of Missouri, Kansas, and Nevada.
If you want thick, healthy, gorgeous hair, then you need Hair Volume from New Nordic. Available as a tablet or a delicious gummy, Hair Volume is available online at Amazon and NewNordicUSA.com or in the hair care aisle at your local CVS.
The Mark Reardon Show, 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Yesterday on Capitol Hill, there was always hearings, right? There were hearings today with Bobby Kennedy Jr. that we highlighted earlier, but Nigel Farage was in front of Congress yesterday on the topic of censorship. He is a Reform UK leader, and it's interesting timing because, Sue, I haven't talked about this case of Graham Linehan. He is a comedy writer. He is known for popular sitcoms across the pond called Father Ted and the IT Crowd, and he has been considered one of the most successful comedy writers in the United Kingdom. But earlier this week, he was heading back from Arizona, where he now lives, to the UK to face a trial for something that he said on Twitter months ago. And as soon as he was landing at Heathrow, he was arrested for something else related to tweets. And here's how he wrote the story. He said something odd happened. He wrote this in the Free Press. something odd happened before I even boarded my flight from Arizona to London. When I handed over my passport at the gate, an official told me I didn't have a seat and I had to be reticketed. At the time, I thought it was just a sort of innocent snafu that makes air travel such a joy. But in hindsight, it was clear I had been flagged. Someone somewhere had made a phone call. And he says, the moment I stepped off the plane at Heathrow, 5 armed police officers were waiting. They escorted me to a private area. They told me I was under arrest for 3 posts on X. In a country where pedophiles escape prison, where knife crime is out of control, the state had mobilized 5 armed officers to arrest a comedy writer for making these 3 posts. And they're in this piece in the Free Press. And one of them says, if a trans-identified male is in a female-only space, he is committing a violent, abusive act. Make a scene, call the cops, and if all else fails, punch him in the balls. That got him flagged. And a couple others which were really, really innocuous. And he writes in the Free Press, when he saw the cops, he laughed. I couldn't help myself. Don't you think that, he says, don't tell me you've been sent by trans activists. The officers didn't react. This was the theme throughout most of the day. Among the rank and file of the police, there was sort of a polite bafflement. They were entirely professional and even kind, but most had absolutely no idea why this was happening or what this was about. And he says, once the officers began reading me my rights and I realized what was happening, the red mist descended. The officers saw how upset I was and treated me gently after that. They even arranged for a van to meet me on the tarmac so I didn't have to do the perp walk. So at Heathrow, he says that his belt, his bag, his devices were confiscated. He's thrown into a green-tiled cell with a bunk and a silver toilet in the corner. Later, he's being questioned by a police officer where the tone shifts, and he's being asked about the X posts. And I like this line. He goes, he asked about each of the posts in turn with the sort of earnest intensity usually reserved for discussing something serious, like, oh, I don't know, crime, like actual crime. He says, I explained that the post about punching a trans-identified man in a female-only space was a serious point made with a joke. Men who enter women's spaces are abusers, and they need to be challenged every time. So this came up when Nigel Farage was before Congress yesterday.
Graham Linehan, the comedy writer, comedic writer, and he put out some tweets months ago when he was in Arizona, and months later he arrives at Heathrow Airport to be met by 5 armed police. At what point did we become North Korea? This is a genuinely worrying, concerning, and shocking situation.
This is in the UK. And he says,
Wow.
Graham says the officer mentioned the term trans people. And he says, I asked him what he meant by the phrase. He said, people who feel their gender is different than what was assigned at birth. And Graham Linehan says, assigned at birth, our sex isn't assigned. He called it semantics. I told him he was using activist language. And then things kind of got crazy because he started to get really high blood pressure into stroke territory. So they took him to the emergency room. And he says, I wrote this piece in the Free Press after spending about 8 hours under observation. And they determined that the blood pressure was stress related. He had long travel and then lack of movement. And then also, being targeted by trans activists. And again, he's heading back there to go on trial for this other X offense. This is unbelievable that this is happening in a country like England. And we've seen some of this on display in Australia and in New Zealand during COVID. It's insane. He says that he was offered bail on one condition. I am not to go on X. That's it. No threats, no speeches about the seriousness of my crimes, just a legal gag order designed to shut me up while I'm in the UK and demand I face another police interview in October. The UK has become a country that is hostile to freedom of speech, hostile to women, and far too accommodating to the demands of violent, entitled, abusive men who have turned the police into their personal goon squad. And again, I hope the cops are embarrassed by it, but how horrifying is that?
Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
If you are leaving downtown on southbound 55, it is lined up approaching Broadway, and that goes down through Bates. To the south of there, there's a little moderate volume in the Peevely area, south of Z in the construction zone there, but it's not bad. Westbound 40, it's Kings Highway out through McCausland, slowing again, approaching Lindbergh through 270, and moderate volume through Chesterfield Valley and out by Lake St. Louis Boulevard. Now, we've got southbound 270 lined up. It's mainly moderate traffic, but it goes from Page down through Doherty Ferry, a little slow at 21. The innerbound southbound, some slow going there. 70 westbound slows at Jennings Station and past the airport and at Highway A. If you're headed into Illinois, 40 is a little slow at the Poplar, but not bad on the bridge itself. This report brought to you by the Diamond Shop. The Diamond Shop, making St. Louis sparkle for over 100 years. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic on 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Is there a concert tomorrow night somewhere downtown that you're aware of?
Oh, I don't know.
Because I want to make sure I'm looking at this right. We get emails from the MAC. I want to talk about the MAC here, and they're offering a downtown traffic alert for tomorrow because there's a concert and there's a Cardinals game as well. Sometimes they do this for, the downtown location just to warn people that something
Gary
might
Clark
be
Jr. at the pageant.
Yeah, that's a little different than the Dome. But I bring it up because the MAC is always trying to guide members into the best situation. Maybe someone wants to come down before the Cardinals game and have an adult beverage or a meal at the downtown location. They can do that very easily, take a shuttle to the game or also to the Blues when they pick up as well. Now, I always kind of focus on some of the charitable things that we do at the MAC, including the Sports Foundation and the Charitable Society for Children, which is something we raise money for throughout the course of the year. The charities this year, Books for STL Kids, the Butterfly Kisses Alliance, which is pregnancy and infant loss support, and KidSmart, tools for learning, lots of school supplies for kids as they go back to school. And you can always find out more about that effort at the MAC and more by going to mac-stl.org.
We, without hesitation, recommend that anybody work with ThrottleNet. The experience will be as good as it's been for us, for anybody, because you'll get a true partnership and you'll be able to rest easy that you're going to get the service that you need while they're also doing all those things that you don't want to have to think about, that you don't want to have to worry about. They're always doing that in the background for you.
Don't wait for your next IT crisis. If your business depends on technology, you need a partner that's got your back. Contact ThrottleNet.com to get a free IT evaluation and see how we can support your IT everything.
Are you nearing retirement and don't know if you have enough money saved to retire? That is scary. Do you have a written retirement financial plan in place? Well, when it comes to retirement planning, the trusted team at Financial and Tax Architects are the best. They've helped people all over St. Louis retire with confidence. And that's what you want. You want to retire with confidence. Now, they offer a one-night, 2.5-hour adult education class called Retirement Planning 101. They hold these at colleges over the St. Louis area and in Illinois. No cost, no obligation, just learning. And at this class, you learn how to avoid costly mistakes, how to maximize your income, how to reduce taxes in retirement. So call them today, 314-888-5101, or visit fta-ria.com and take the first step toward a smarter retirement. 314-888-5101.
Hey guys, Glover here for my friends Mark and Neil Gelman from the Gelman team of eXp Realty. If you want immediate cash for your home or to see what your home is actually worth in today's market, find out for free from the local experts. 314-336-1991. Go to thegelmanteam.com.
Congressman Jason Smith, he's the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee. Are they rebranding the big, beautiful bill? It looks that way. We'll ask him coming up after Fox News.
KFTK FM Florissant from the Kaufman Townsley St. Louis's Injury Lawyers Studio. Call 314-500-5000.
That's 314-500-5000.
All on the free Odyssey app.
They will stay in place a little longer. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. The National Guard is extending its deployment in D.C.
Brigadier General Leland Blanchard says the D.C. National Guard will stay on active duty, telling guardsmen in a social media video the mission is not complete.
We continue to work to ensure that everyone that walks through these city streets is safe. They deserve that. You deserve that. Our nation deserves that.
The National Guard was activated as part of President Trump's surge of federal law enforcement to combat crime in D.C. The extension of the troop presence comes as the D.C. Attorney General filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration, arguing the deployment is an illegal military occupation.
Fox's Jared Halpern with the White House. This is a federal appeals court has blocked a lower court ruling that restricted President Trump's use of troops in Los Angeles during immigration raids. The president has said he plans to send the National Guard to Chicago to combat crime, citing the shootings over the holiday weekend. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker again saying the president is trying to create unrest as an excuse.
Part of their kind of nefarious plan is begin with ICE, cause mayhem on the ground, and
by doing that, say that there's a need for military troops on the ground to protect ICE.
And Pritzker again promised to sue if soldiers are deployed. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at the center of a fiery hearing in the Senate as lawmakers grow concerned over upheaval at the CDC. Virginia Democrat Mark Warner zeroed in on the pandemic.
You don't have any idea how many Americans died from COVID? I don't think anybody knows that because there was so much data chaos coming out of the CDC.
Some Democrats are calling on Kennedy to step down after the CDC director was forced out and several top staffers resigned. America's listening to Fox News.
Here's the tale of the daily med fill. Same old pharmacy, same old bill, but those prices kept rising higher still.
Till the savings wrangler rode in. Cool as can be. Have good RX. Saving massively.
No plan? Don't matter none. Up to 80% off. Deals are done.
Discounts hitting harder than Ma's chili. Dang. That one little app does all the rest.
Save time and money on prescriptions.
Check Good RX. Good RX is not insurance.
Let's go! You're still glowing, flirting, grooving. You still got it. But your immune system weakens as you age, making it harder to fight flu, pneumococcal pneumonia, RSV, and COVID-19. Vaccines are a key part of any health routine and help strengthen your immune response. Ask your doctor or pharmacist which vaccines you need. Schedule in minutes at vaxassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Air Comfort Service, heating, cooling, and insulation, weather.
It is a top 10 evening for the weather across St. Louis with a top 10 weekend on the way. Clear skies. We fall into the upper 60s this evening. 62 for the overnight low. Friday, bit of a changeable sky, mix of clouds and sunshine. Couple of showers developing late in the day Friday, 75. Friday night, evening showers, then turning partly cloudy, 54. This is 97.1 FM Talk. Chief Meteorologist Dave Murray.
This hour of the Mark Reardon Show is sponsored by Gamma Tree Experts. Your trees deserve the best care. Call Gamma Tree Experts. This is the Mark Reardon Show on 97.1 FM Talk.
It's a guy by the name of Michael Tracey, who is an independent journalist. He's got like 300,000 followers on the X, and he was at the Epstein press conference on Capitol Hill yesterday. I played some of the, some of the audio from that. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene was there.
Every single person that enabled it. The shame falls on every single person that took money to continue it. And the shame falls on the people in power over the past several decades that protected the monster, Jeffrey Epstein, and his cabal.
So then they had some victims there. This is a woman by the name of Haley Robeson.
Mr. President Donald J. Trump, I am a registered Republican, not that that matters because this is not political. However, I cordially invite you to the Capitol to meet me in person so you can understand this is not a hoax.
So Michael was there covering this, and he kind of got thrown out of the news conference, which I found sort of interesting. So we invited him to tell that story. I think he was, President Trump's deal on this is he says it's a hoax. And this is what he said. And I do think, because sometimes you have to pay close, nuanced attention to what the president is saying. I don't believe he's saying that Jeffrey Epstein being a creepy dude who had young girls, that were abused is a hoax. He's saying that the conspiracy to include him as a child rapist or otherwise is a hoax.
So this is a Democrat hoax that never ends. It reminds me a little of the Kennedy situation. We gave him everything over and over again, more and more and more, and nobody's ever satisfied.
So that might be true, but again, these were Republicans yesterday. Tom Massey, who is never on the president's side, from Kentucky, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. But we'll talk with Michael Tracey about that. The Chiefs get going tomorrow night in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, and the season starts tonight with the Cowboys and the Eagles. Our friend Alex Gold with Kansas City's 96.5 The Fan. It's one of our sister stations in Kansas City. Is going to join us with a preview here in just a few minutes. But first, he is the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee. He's the guy that, helped shepherd the big, beautiful bill through Congress, over to the Senate, onto the president's desk. He is the 8th District Congressman from Missouri. Jason Smith back with us this afternoon. Congressman, how are you?
Doing well, Mark. It's always great to be with you.
You're back in D.C. after you guys had several weeks off, didn't you? Well, not off. We got to be careful about that because you were working in the district, right?
That's exactly right. I feel like I was working harder than what we do in D.C., which is how it should be. I think I visited 24 of my 28 counties. I actually visited 6 different states campaigning for some of my colleagues, and it was quite busy. And I had 2 field hearings for the Ways and Means Committee during the break, one in Las Vegas and also one at the Reagan Library.
Well, I'm going to get back to maybe some of that here in a second, but let's talk about the big, beautiful bill. Or do we have to call it something else? Because now we're hearing that there is encouragement from the White House to call this the Working Families Tax Cut Bill or the Working Families Tax Plan. What's going on there? Can you explain the rebrand and is this moving forward?
So first off, we have been saying all along that this tax bill is a cut for working families. And if you remember my bipartisan tax bill that we passed out of the House, the Senate killed it. The title of that was Working Families Tax Cut. So it's the same thing that we've been working on. The problem is that this bill is way more than tax cuts. It's border security, it's national defense. And so when you look at the tax portion, you need to discuss what's in it and the tax cuts that's for working families. And that's what the White House is pushing towards. Not that they're afraid of any kind of name, but this bill provides tax cuts for working families by no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, increasing the child tax credit, creating the Trump accounts, creating tax incentives for paid family leave, for child care credit. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's what's in the bill. It's just making sure that the American people know what we passed.
Well, right. And see, that's the rub, as you know, because the legacy media will not tell people what's in the bill. And here's what the New York Times says, and this is how they're spinning it. Now, to a certain extent, I get it. I really do. But let me just read the paragraph here from the Times story this morning. The attempt to relabel Mr. Trump's top legislative achievement was an implicit acknowledgement that the law is deeply unpopular with its sweeping cuts to Medicaid and social safety net programs, as well as changes to the Affordable Care Act. Those policies are now threatening Republicans' chances of maintaining control of the House. And then they say more than 64% of the voters view the legislation unfavorably, according to recent polling. Well, that doesn't surprise me, given the nature of the media coverage of this. And here's something I asked this question just out loud on the air yesterday, and I'd love to know your answer. So let's say that the situation was reversed and the Democrats had control. Maybe they had the trifecta. And these tax cuts that were passed under the first administration for every working American were up for renewal, because they are. They were up for renewal whether the Democrats were in charge or the Republicans. What do you think they would have done in that situation? They never want to talk. They got away with the whole election, Jason, as you know, never having to address that issue.
I think without a doubt, they would have let the tax cuts expire, which would have been on average a 22% tax increase on every single taxpayer. Vice President Harris was very clear during the campaign that she wanted it to expire. Joe Biden was clear in the campaign for the short-lived time he was running for president,
right.
That he wanted it to expire. So I truly believe, the Democrats who I serve with in Washington, most of them have not found a tax increase that they don't like. And so they want more of the hard-working taxpayers' money so that they can spend your money. They think they can spend your money better than what you can, which is completely the contrast between the Republicans and the Democrats. And that's what we're doing. We're making sure people aren't facing the largest tax increase in the history of America, but also say someone who makes less than $100,000 a year, they're going to face an additional 12% tax cut, and also safeguarding that they're not going to have a tax increase. It's a good win.
So what would you say about, because I always like to cite the polling on this. Some of this polling was done before it was even signed by the president. But what would you say when, this gets repeated, the majority of Americans are against the bill or have a negative, view of the bill?
What I would say that when you look at the provisions that's within the bill, they poll at 70% are higher, whether it's increasing the child tax credit, whether it's tax cut for seniors, whether it's no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, increasing the standard deduction, creating the Trump accounts. These are all 70% plus issues one-on-one. Unfortunately, what's getting the narrative by the media is that, oh, there's Medicaid cuts and you're going to throw people off of Medicaid. The people who are going to be taken off of Medicaid are people who are illegal immigrants, or they just simply don't qualify, but the Biden administration allowed them to be on Medicaid. That is all that we're doing in regards to Medicaid. This bill created the largest investment in rural hospitals of $50 billion, thanks to the hard work of Senator Hawley. So, these are things that no one's talking about. There's never been that kind of investment in rural hospitals, but it is in this bill. But they're not polling on that.
Yeah, Missouri Congressman Jason Smith, he's the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, is with us. You mentioned earlier, you said you had 2 field meetings for Ways and Means. Explain what that, I think we talked about that before, but how did that work and what's that all about?
The way that I have governed the Ways and Means Committee has been totally different. I've been trying to go outside of Washington to hear directly from small business owners, from working families, from farmers of the issues they're facing. And that's how we created the big, beautiful bill. We had 15 different field hearings throughout the country. Well, what we did during the August recess was we went to Vegas. We heard from a DoorDash employee who actually was formerly from Missouri, who said that because of the no tax on tips, she's going to be able to spend more time with her family. We had a waiter that testified that said because of the no tax on tips, the savings from it, he was going to be able to cover his entire energy bills for a year. We had lineman who was talking about how no tax on overtime was helpful and how it's going to change their life. Then we went to the Reagan Library, and if you recall, the largest tax cut in history was the 1981 tax cut until this bill, and that was signed by Reagan at the Reagan Ranch. So it's very fitting for us to go there and talk about all the pro-growth tax policies that was passed in this bill, whether it's 100% expensing, 100% expensing for new factories, whether it was doubling Section 179, making the small business deduction permanent, things that will create more jobs and grow the economy. That's what we discussed at the Reagan Library with small business owners, with farmers, with workers.
All right, so there's already talk of another government shutdown in one of the the political publications out there, The Hill, which is not exactly something that leans conservative. They said, spurred on by disgruntled progressives who want to see more fight from them, Democrats are breathing fire after President Trump thumbed his nose at Congress last week by proposing a pocket rescission, which would allow his White House budget director to rescind $5 billion in previously appropriated funding without any input from Capitol Hill. So explain the shutdown dynamics and whether or not, is that accurate, what they're reporting right there about the rescission?
Well, Senator Schumer has been very vocal, especially yesterday, that there's going to be a shutdown. And you know that in order to pass appropriations bills, you have to have 60 votes in the United States Senate. We have 52 Republicans. So that means 8 Democrats have to vote in order to keep government open. Here on the House side, we can pass the funding bill, and then it goes over to the Senate. And then, unfortunately, if Chuck Schumer keeps all of his colleagues together and oppose it, they will shut down government. And that appears to be the plan and strategy that they're working towards right now.
Yeah, they think that they have a bigger advantage compared to the spring because they're claiming that here again we get the polling that Trump was doing pretty well in the polls in March, and then right now he's down 9 points is what they claim in the favorability. So they feel like they have more political leverage.
Well, the one thing about it is that who has the lowest polling ratings in Washington, D.C. happens to be the Democrat Party. And that's not what they're talking about. The Democrats have historic lows of polling of approval rating. And it's because of how they're acting and how the AOCs and the Omars and the Tlaibs are taking over their party.
Well, and they love criminals, don't they? They don't like victims of crime. They love criminals. What's your perspective on what's going on in D.C. right now? Even Muriel Bowser has had to admit, hey, guess what? Carjacking's down 87% from last year at this time. That's weird, isn't it, Jason?
Well, the mayor of D.C. is definitely no conservative by any means. And the fact that she is praising the work that President Trump has done in the city is amazing. And I'll tell you, I feel safer in the city. And I did not. When you would pull up to a stoplight here in this city, you had to look around to make sure someone wasn't going to come to the side of your car with a gun. That's how many carjackings happened in your capital city. It's unacceptable. It's because law and order was not being enforced, but it is now. It's a new day in Washington, thanks to President Trump.
So you have lawmakers here in Missouri, in Jeff City, discussing a few things because Governor Kihua has called them back for this special session. Will you, Congressman Jason Smith, have a bit of a different district that you're running in by this time next year because of redistricting and redrawing some of these lines again so soon?
It's up to all the state lawmakers to make those decisions. I'm not able to draw those maps, but I believe that it's going to be fairly the same. But who knows? It's up to whatever they provide us. We'll see. I've
said this. I'm a little uncomfortable with this only because, doing it every couple of years does not seem to instill confidence in the entire system by the voters. But then, I have to give that a little pause just because when I look across the river here in Illinois, in the most gerrymandered state that there is, maybe then you sit back and, even though I try to stay principled, Jason, I really do. You think, wait a second, they do this. And by the way, if they get control in 28, they're going to try to make, Puerto Rico and D.C. a state and expand the Supreme Court and all these things. So I guess, I come back to if you don't take advantage of the numbers and the math right now, you're going to lose on the other side of this.
Let's just say you look at other states like Massachusetts. There's 9 members of Congress from Massachusetts, and not one is held by a Republican. However, Trump got just almost 40% of the vote in the most recent election. Connecticut, there's 5 House members there, not one Republican, but Trump got 42% of the vote in that state. Maine, there's not one Republican House member, and Trump got 48% of the vote. They have been gerrymandering for a very long time. You look at the state of California. I know the governor there is trying to change the maps, but out of 54 seats, we have 9. That's 17% Republican, and Trump got 40% of the vote.
That's the problem.
It's not a true representation.
I know, and that's the difficulty on that particular issue. Jason, great to have you on. I hope all is well, and we'll talk soon. Catch up here in a few weeks.
Good to be with you,
All
Mark.
right, take care. Thank you.
Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
Well, we've got an accident reported westbound 70 at 270. It's on the shoulder, but slow-moving traffic back past Lambert. Stall westbound 70 past 141. That one had been in the right lane, so it goes that far. And then it's just the usual volume. 64, Kings Highway in pockets out through 270. Some volume through Chesterfield Valley and again, either side of Lake St. Louis Boulevard. Now, southbound 270, slow pockets Olive down through Gravois. Northbound is slowing, headed for 70. Southbound 55 is jammed as you head on down toward Bates. But we look great if you're headed into Illinois on the bridges. Barron Mirror Glass and Door brings you this report. They're simply the finest when it comes to mirror glass and shower doors. You can't find better quality, prices, or service than Barron Mirror Glass and Door. They have the basics all the way up to the elite. Barron Mirror Glass and Door can't be beat. I'm Sue Thomas. That's Traffic 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
I'm probably next week going to start guiding you into registration for the next event that we have with the team from the Retirement Advisor Group. We do 5 a year. We're at the end of the, toward the end of the year. We do have one more event that's coming up. But the great thing for you is if you've heard about Thomas before, if you want to know a little bit more about their strategy at the Retirement Advisor Group, which is safely linking to the market, you can do it one-on-one. All you have to do is press register on the tab that's up there on the website or call 314-993-9494. I think it's helpful also to, read some of the testimonials. If you click on About Us on that tab on retirementkey.com, you can see clients and what they're saying about Thomas and the team. And they match up perfectly with the calls that I made to some clients of Thomas Helbig's a few years ago, where everyone said that they appreciated his financial expertise. The advice had worked in the way that they said it was. They loved the fact that Thomas was very responsive and he called them back. Here's Stephen, who says that Rosie and I appreciate your help. You're definitely a true professional, and we have referred you to all of our friends. I can honestly say that you are like family to us, and that's what you're going to feel with the team from the Retirement Advisory Group. Get online today. Make an appointment. RetirementKey.com.
I'm still going for it, even with higher stroke risk from atrial fibrillation, an irregular heartbeat not caused by a heart valve problem. Over a 3-year study, Eliquis apixaban tablets reduced stroke risk better than warfarin, and over 97% of Eliquis patients did not experience a stroke. A first stroke occurred in 2.9% of warfarin patients versus 2.3% of Eliquis patients.
Don't stop prescription Eliquis without asking your doctor. Stroke risk may increase. Eliquis can cause serious and potentially fatal bleeding. Don't take if you have an artificial heart valve, abnormal bleeding, or antiphospholipid syndrome. While taking, you may bruise more easily or bleed longer. A spinal injection increases blood clot risk, which may cause paralysis. Get medical help right away for unexpected bleeding or bruising, or back pain, tingling, numbness, muscle weakness, or incontinence. Aspirin products, NSAIDs, SSRIs, SNRIs, and blood thinners increase bleeding risk. Tell your doctor about planned medical or dental procedures. Learn more at Eliquis.com or call 1-855-ELIQUIS.
If you're thinking about replacing your windows before winter hits, which is smart, don't keep making the same mistake. Stop replacing your failing vinyl windows on your home now with more vinyl. Lakeside Renovation and Design will install Infinity from Marvin fiberglass windows. They're built to last, they're energy efficient, plus they look stunning, and they're custom built for your home. Installed by Lakeside's expert team, and they're going to offer a lifetime workmanship warranty. If you're ready to upgrade your windows once and for all, you need to visit windowsbylakeside.com. Schedule your free consultation today.
When you're approaching retirement, there are a lot of questions to answer. Do you have enough money to fund your income for life? How should you claim Social Security? And what's your plan for health care and long-term care? Hi, I'm Eric Robert, Director of Investments with the ClearPath Wealth Management Group at Stifel and host of On the Money Saturday mornings at 11 on 97.1 FM Talk. Don't leave your retirement to chance. It's crucial to understand and address relevant risks before you retire. Our team can help you get organized, guide you through critical retirement decisions, and create an investment portfolio designed around your needs. To schedule your free retirement plan consultation, go to clearpathinvesting.com. That's clearpathinvesting.com, or call us at 636-695-2650. That's clearpathinvesting.com or 636-695-2650. Stifel Nicholas and Company Incorporated, member SIPC and NYSE.
This is St. Louis Conservative. No filters, no fluff. Mark Reardon is back on the mic.
Okay, that's the wrong music. That is the wrong music to be played. This is the right music here. Oh, yeah. Here we go. Tonight, Dallas and Philadelphia, but perhaps more importantly, Kansas City in action from Sao Paulo tomorrow night. Our friend Alex Gold with Kansas City's 96.5 The Fan with us. Are you in Brazil? Or are you in Kansas City? You could lie, by the way. You could say that you're in Brazil if you're not there.
I wish I was in Brazil, Mark. I wish I was down there. But no, I'm excited. I'm amped up. I know you're a big NFL guy, big sports bettor as well. So we're about to enter the best couple months of the year.
I simply can't wait. And I'm so excited about a really good game tonight. I'm also very excited I think I've told you this before. I share my allegiances, and this gets criticized quite often. But I feel like I have the freedom in this country and the liberty to do this, have an AFC and an NFC team. So I'm a big Packers guy. I spent 9 years at the Packers flagship up there in Milwaukee, and it was right after Brett Favre won, that first Super Bowl. So I definitely got hooked up into the Packers. So I'm very thrilled that I'm not going to have to see Micah Parsons on the field for the Cowboys tonight, because I think that the Packers did all right with that deal, didn't they?
Oh, yeah, I love it. I love it for Green Bay. I really do. I think they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender. We were talking locally on our show. If there's 4 teams realistically that you think can win the Super Bowl. Who are the 4? And Green Bay was one of them. The Eagles were the other, and then Chiefs and Buffalo. Those were the only 4 teams that I actually think can win a Lombardi Trophy this year. My answer would have been a little bit different before the Parsons trade, but I think that kind of puts them over the top there in Green Bay.
So how do we feel about the Chiefs heading into the season? It seems like most of the experts, and this has happened, maybe it happened last year too, they kind of write the Chiefs off because they've been to so many Super Bowls in a row. And last year wasn't Mahomes' best year. You know, the scoring wasn't there. Kelsey didn't have the numbers. So what is the realistic expectation for this team? Because I think a lot of people are expecting some regression. I mean, let's face it, it's hard to get there 4 years in a row.
No question. Look, regression in terms of win, sure. Like, they're not going to win 15 games again. They won 15 a year ago. I think that is pretty fair to say. But are they a 13-win team or are they a 14-win team? You know, anybody thinking they're going to suddenly be might be a 10-win team or fringe playoff team, I think that's a bit wild. And I think people are looking too much into what happened in the Super Bowl. You know, their lasting impression, though, was them getting whooped pretty good, right? By Philadelphia, and people can't get over that. But, Mark, I think they're actually better positioned heading into week 1 this year than they were a year ago. They still don't have Rashee Rice. He's suspended for 6 games, so they're going to still not have the full wide receiver room. But the room of Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, and Travis Kelce, who we saw him at training camp, he does look quicker. You know, this might be his last year, but he does look quicker. He's slimmed down a little bit. And they've solved, I believe, their left tackle problem with Josh Simmons, their first-round pick out of Ohio State. So with all that being said, I think they're actually a better football team. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win more games. That's how tough it is. But I do think people have made a mistake by looking at what happened in the Super Bowl and just kind of assuming that that's who they are now.
How do you look at tomorrow night's game? These international games, I get why they do them for the league, but I always, especially when it comes to wagering, I always look at these international games, the ones that are overseas, a little differently because, they're different. Let's face it, they are different. You're not in a comfortable territory. Sometimes elevation becomes an issue. So what are your thoughts on the game tomorrow night? Because obviously there's an expectation that the Chargers are going to become better as well.
I think the question with it being in the international stage is going to be the playing surface, honestly. And it's something none of us are going to really have the answer to until later on tomorrow. But last year in Brazil, it was a problem for Green Bay in Philadelphia in the playing surface. And so, today there were some photos. They were just at a practice field. It looked like they were at a high school, but it was like it was a field that you would have seen maybe in some random neighborhood, small park or small high school. It didn't look like the best shape. The field goal posts were probably from like 1970 or something like that. But I think that's my biggest concern. These international games are going to happen more and more, as you were saying. Every year, I think we're going to start seeing eventually every team play an international game with the next CBA, and they better have these field conditions figured out. But as far as what's at stake tomorrow, I mean, it is a divisional showdown. I mean, it's a big game, divisional implications. I think the Chargers' loss of Rashawn Slater, though, their left tackle, is massive, Mark. Like, I think that's a tough one to get over if you're the Chargers. I actually think Denver will end up being the second best team in this division, not the Chargers. Justin Herbert has not shown he can win a big football game, and that's a big problem considering the conference they're in and the division they're in.
Yeah, so I agree with you on the Broncos, and that was going to be my next question because they were better last year, and they look like they're positioned to certainly move forward, right?
Absolutely, and their defense, I think, got better. This is already one of the top defenses in football, and they go and they spend one of their top draft picks on a young corner. They make sure they retain some of those guys on the defensive line. They bring in a linebacker from San Francisco in Greenlaw. So it's going to be whether or not Bo Nix can elevate more. Like last year was very good rookie, but how high is his ceiling? Is he his ceiling to me is not going to put him in the category of Burrow or Mahomes or Allen or whatever. All right, so let's say he's just a little bit better. Is that enough to get a divisional win? I'm not so sure. Is it enough to make the playoffs again, win a playoff game this go around? Yeah, I think that's probably where they're at. I would put them outside of that grouping of Kansas City, Buffalo, and Baltimore for sure still.
Hey, Alex, Ethan here. Sticking with the AFC West, we know how much talent there is. We know that it's not quite often that you see 3 teams make the playoffs from one division, but we did see it twice last year, and I think there's a chance that we could see it again this year, and it wouldn't necessarily surprise me if it ended up being the AFC West, considering those 3 teams might beat each other up a little bit. What are your thoughts on the odds of all 3 of those teams finding a way to sneak into the AFC playoffs this year?
So I wouldn't be shocked if it happens again, but just for full transparency, we did our picks today on the show, and I did not have 3 teams coming out of the AFC West. I'm trying to remember my exact AFC playoff field off the top of my head. I believe the wild cards I had were the shot. This will surprise you. The Steelers is the 7 seed.
Ooh, wow.
I believe I had the Texans as the 6, and then the 5 seed was the Broncos. That's who I. So I only had 2 teams out of the AFC West.
Who did you have winning the South?
The Jags. That's my
Oh
surprise
boy,
pick.
man!
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go back and listen to this because I'm very intrigued now. Because I don't know. I guess I had the Jaguars also making the playoffs, but I haven't heard a lot of people necessarily picking outside of Houston to win the AFC South.
Right. People are out on Trevor Lawrence is what it is. And look, this is it. This is a make or break year. He's got a new head coach, but I like the new head coach, Liam Cohen. For those that don't know, he was the offensive coordinator in Tampa when Baker Mayfield last year went out and had his best season of his career, threw over 40 touchdown passes and was awesome. This is it. If it doesn't work this year for Trevor Lawrence, guys, it's not going to happen. But I believe with Lawrence and one of their skilled players and Brian Thomas and obviously Travis Hunter, their top draft pick, I think in a division and that is still very, very weak, and a Texans team that got worse on the offensive line, I think the Jags could be one of the surprise teams, not to make noise in the playoffs, but to win the division and get into the postseason.
Alex, one final question. I rode Jaden Daniels and Saquon Barkley to a fantasy football championship last year. I have both of them on my team again this year, Jaden as a keeper. Some people think he's going to regress. I love that kid. I think he's a superstar. Your thoughts on Jaden Daniels and the Commanders? I'm sorry. Did I call him the Commanders? I guess I have to, right?
Look, I think he necessarily won't regress majorly. I think the team won't be as good. Their schedule's just way tougher. You look at some of the teams they beat last year. I mean, they had a soft schedule. So I think win-wise, the Commanders, I think I have them as a 10-win team today. I mentioned as a wild card, but a 10-win wild card team. Jaden Daniels, I'm with you. I think he's that guy, right? I think he's one of those special quarterbacks in the league. But I do think schedule's way too tough for the Commanders to be a 13-win or 12-win team.
Well, it's going to be fun tonight. We'll have to see what happens between the Eagles and the Cowboys. Awesome to have you back on, Alex, and talking football. Have fun with the Chiefs game tomorrow night. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, take care. Thank you.
Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
Well, on the roads, we've picked up some volume on westbound 64. Now, this is approaching Kings Highway, but it goes all the way out in pockets through 270, a little bit through Chesterfield Valley, and again, approaching 70. Now, we've got an accident reported westbound 70 near the Rock Road, and it was supposed to be on the right side. We've got a jam that goes back past the airport. That's the worst of it there. Southbound 270, still mainly moderate volume, and it's olive in pockets down to just south of 44. And 44 westbound is slow in front of the Arch grounds. No delays headed into Illinois on the Poplar Street Bridge, but there is some volume on southbound 55, of course, at Bates. This report brought to you by Jerry Kelly Heating and Air Conditioning. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic on 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
The Martins came over, we were having spaghetti when we suddenly noticed that we started getting sweaty. So we grabbed the keys and we ate it in the van. That's what my friend said, call Jerry Kelly, man, JerryKelly.com. Give him a call, even though it's late, JerryKelly.com.
I would wager that there's a fair amount of you out there that would love to do a remodel for your bathroom, but you are not doing it because you think it's going to be too expensive. So I want to guide you into Michael's Baths here in St. Louis, family owned and operated. And if you give them a call, you get an estimate on a remodel for your bathroom, you're going to find probably a price that fits your budget at a price that's usually 30 to 50% less than their competitors. They do great work. Your bathroom might be small, but fixing it up can be huge. You got cracked tiles, outdated fixtures, a tub that's seen better days. They know the feeling. At Michael's Baths, they'd love to help you. That's all they do is bathrooms, right? They specialize in affordable bathroom remodeling that fits your budget and your lifestyle. So you want a walk-in shower, better storage, a fresh, modern look. They make it simple, clean, and budget-friendly. No gimmicks, no surprises. They do great work, and that's why I recommend them. So you can call them at 636-775-0800. The website, michaelsbaths.com. Check out Michael's Baths today. michaelsbaths.com.
You're listening to Leaf Filter Radio, and the guru of gutter protection himself, Chris Coonahan, is here to take your most pressing leaf-related questions.
Hey, everybody. Chris here. I understand we have Ron on the line. Ron, where are you calling from?
Uh-oh. Ron, are you calling from a ladder?
Well,
I was. I wanted to ask Chris what I need to do to get my gutters ready to have leaf filter installed.
Oh, Ron, you don't have to do anything. A Leaf Filter Trusted Pro will come out and clean out your gutters, realign and seal your gutters, and install a Leaf Filter, America's #1 gutter protection system.
So I didn't need to get on this ladder?
Ron, Leaf Filter Trusted Pros are in your neighborhood and ready to help. Just visit leaffilter.com/radio to schedule your free gutter inspection and get up to 30% off.
Thank goodness. What was that site?
That's leaffilter.com/radio for your free gutter inspection today. See representative for warranty details. Promotion is 20% off plus a 10% senior or military discount. One discount per household.
It's time for a $98 AC tune-up.
And this portion of the show is sponsored by Jerry Kelly Heating and Air.
Built on backbone, not buzzwords. 97.1 FM Talk. St. Louis Conservative.
The truth needs to come out, and the government holds the truth. The cases that are sealed hold the truth. Jeffrey Epstein's estate holds the truth. The FBI, the DOJ, and the CIA holds the truth.
Okay, so that was Marjorie Taylor Greene from a news conference that happened yesterday. And then, the president kind of weighed in on some of this yesterday as well, saying this.
So this is a Democrat hoax that never ends. It reminds me a little of the Kennedy situation. We gave him everything over and over again, more and more and more, and nobody's ever satisfied. From what I understand, I could check, but from what I understand, thousands of pages of documents have been given, but it's really a Democrat hoax.
So the Democrat hoax, but then I think, this is where Trump is open to interpretation. I don't believe he's saying that what Jeffrey Epstein is accused of doing and some of the things that have come to light are a hoax. I think he's saying that the connection that people are trying to make with him doing more salacious things is a hoax. I'm guessing here on that, but that comment got a lot of attention. Now, on the Epstein files itself, I've admitted that this is not a story that just grabs me. And I don't want to be insensitive to actual sexual abuse, but it's amazing the politics of all this and how it's come together. There's an independent journalist by the name of Michael Tracey who's with me tonight, who was thrown out of the press conference yesterday on Capitol Hill. So I wanted to hear his perspective. Michael, welcome to 97.1 FM Talk in St. Louis.
Hey, it's good to be with you.
So what is your involvement in this? I don't think I was following you until yesterday. Somebody else had retweeted some of your stuff, and I was kind of paying attention to what was going on with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tom Massey, and you were trying to ask some questions, and I even heard one of the sound bites that you posted from someone who was just there witnessing what happened, and that person thought that you were treated unfairly. So what went down yesterday, and what's your whole perspective on this right now?
Yeah, so yesterday there was this big press conference that was held outside the Capitol, in front of the Capitol. It was called by Congressman Ro Khanna, Democrat of California, and also Congressman Thomas Massey, Republican of Kentucky. And it featured this lawyer, Bradley Edwards, who represented a number of purported Epstein victims, including Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who's now deceased as of April, we're told, but she was represented by this lawyer, Bradley Edwards, for many years. And it was Virginia Roberts Giuffre who really introduced what we would now come to know as like the popular conception of what it is that Epstein did in the most kind of maximalist version, right? Mm-hmm. When people suspect that Jeffrey Epstein was running a massive child sex trafficking ring that was enforced by blackmail or something like this, that notion originates with Virginia Giuffre, and actually a motion that was filed on her behalf by Bradley Edwards, the very lawyer who was presiding essentially over this press conference yesterday. And so I was there because I was invited by Ro Khanna's staff to take part in the press conference. I've been very immersed in the Epstein issue, particularly since early July, but intermittently probably for the preceding 10 years prior to that. I just think that the public understanding of what this case consists of is just horribly wrong in so many cases. And it's a product of very lazy journalism, kind of reflexive partisan cynicism. I was in terms of your introduction, as far as President Trump goes, he has often said that he believes this to be a hoax of some kind, or he'll say, BS. And your interpretation was that maybe he's referring to how the Democrats have tried to weaponize this or appropriate it. I think that might be true on some level, but I also think that, Donald Trump did have a personal relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
No
He had
doubt.
knowledge of Epstein. And so I think he is probably a little bit more skeptical of some of the outlandish claims that are made around Epstein because it just doesn't jive with his experience, either with Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell, who he also knew socially. So I think, if you'll notice, Donald Trump doesn't often whenever he's asked about Epstein, he's very aggressively dismissive. He doesn't say, oh, we must honor the victims, or he doesn't make these standard politician style homages to the purported victims. Instead, he's just very aggressively dismissive. And I think that kind of speaks to what his understanding is of the substance of this issue, is that it actually kind of aligns somewhat with mine, which is that there's been so many rampant exaggerations and there's so much fiction and there's so much hysteria that people allow themselves to get totally divorced from the facts. So I showed up at this press conference, right? I wanted to ask this lawyer, Bradley Edwards, about Virginia Roberts-Giuffre, very central, almost the central accuser in this whole mess, who introduces these child sex trafficking and blackmail allegations over a decade ago, and it just gains steam as the years go by because she was proven to be a chronic fabricator. People might get offended if they hear that. They might not believe it. It's beyond dispute in the public record. She chronically fabricated claims against people like Alan Dershowitz. She had to recant her claims against Alan Dershowitz. I can give a million other examples of her confabulations or fabulism, whatever synonym you want to use. So I wanted to put that to Bradley Edwards and get him to address it, because throughout this press conference yesterday, they were parading out victim, quote unquote, after victim, quote unquote. And they were all venerating Virginia Roberts-Giuffre as though she was this martyred truth teller, right, who had an unblemished record of credibility or something. And
that's not the case.
It couldn't be the more opposite of the case. And what happened was, these people running this press conference had zero expectation that they were going to even ask a mildly critical question by anyone, because everybody's petrified to challenge any of the premises here. It's supposed to be a public press conference. I was invited as a member of the press. You're supposed to ask critical questions.
Right.
But
Go figure.
People thought it was shocking behavior, right? And so Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'm sorry to say, I never had a particular problem with her. I had maybe some political disagreements here and there, but now a bridge has been crossed, okay? Because Marjorie Taylor Greene basically tried to whip up, and don't take my word for it. Please watch the video.
Yep.
You can listen to the audio.
I did.
She tried to whip up a mob against me, and she was calling out to the Capitol Police to expel me from the press conference because she didn't like the content of my question. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I've been saying this all day because people have been asking about it, if she happens to be listening to this show, Congressman, you crossed the line because you tried to get me arrested because you objected to the contents of a question I asked at a public press conference I was invited to by the organizers. So
yeah, that's ridiculous.
You have a problem on your hands, because I'm not going to stand for that.
Right. So the problem is in this situation, this is where it gets difficult for me, because you have two of the people in Congress that were at that event yesterday who are two of the biggest nut jobs in all of Congress. And I don't disagree with Marjorie Taylor Greene on everything, but she's a little kooky. And Tom Massey is even kookier than that. Now, you had a chance, though, to talk with Tom Massey after all this. Is that true?
I did, yeah. And, it's a little bit unfortunate for me because I don't consider Thomas Massey really to be a kook. Actually, Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey I know personally, somewhat. I'm not best friends or anything, but I've known them. I've corresponded with them. I've always found them to be among the more rational, let's say, members of Congress. One Democrat, one Republican. They're both willing to somewhat buck party consensus on certain issues. I think Thomas Massey is one of the very few Republicans who's not totally subservient to Trump. Trump has vowed to primary him. Ro Khanna, a little bit more independent-minded. Most Democrats live in their annoying little bubbles, but Ro Khanna
he's the Democrat who goes on Fox on a regular basis,
exactly.
right? Yeah,
he'll go on more right-wing podcasts and stuff like that. So I have some degree of respect for them, at least more so than I would for the average member of Congress. But now I find it to be unfortunate because they've chosen to align themselves with who I consider to be an extortionist lawyer, meaning Bradley Edwards, who's been a purveyor of all these ridiculous falsehoods as in his representation of Virginia Roberts-Giuffre. They've been central players in fomenting what I consider to be a mass hysteria, and they really just don't seem to know a whole lot about the underlying facts or evidence. So, I did talk to Thomas Massey afterwards, and, he basically said something to the effect of he's convinced that there must be hundreds of victims.
Mm-hmm.
And he was annoyed at me already at this point. He said I was very rude. So I don't know. I guess he was tacitly endorsing my being ejected, although he didn't say that outright. Anyway, it was he wasn't a fan of me by this point, even though I've had very friendly relations with him in the past. Even praised him on a few things here and there, where we align. But he was saying that, so after I was ejected, I was able to mill around the perimeter. And then once the event was over, Thomas Massey was just kind of hanging out, talking to some stragglers or journalists. I got to talk to him a little bit. And he says something to the effect of, I'm convinced that there are hundreds of victims. I can't tell you really who or what happened to who, but I'm convinced of this, he says, essentially. And I did a Substack post on this today if people want to read it. Tracey.net.
And I read it. I actually read it. So, and I want to get to that because I want to speed through this a little bit, because when you wrote about this, you wrote about one of the victims, and you put it in quotes, right? Someone named Annie Farmer. So just talk about her a little bit.
Okay, yeah. So Annie Farmer was one of these, I guess, purported victims that Thomas Massey is sure must exist, right, and must be honored or respected, and they even call them survivors or whatever, right? So Annie Farmer did. She was one of the people who addressed this, spoke at this press conference yesterday, and she's a significant figure actually because she was one of the 4 alleged victims that the government called to testify against Ghislaine Maxwell in 2021 at her criminal trial. So of this universe of supposedly over 1,000 victims the government claims, or the DOJ and FBI claimed in their memo they put out in early July of this year, they claim there's over 1,000 victims, right? They could only manage to find 4 to testify at the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. And then 2 of the 4 that they managed to find, including Annie Farmer, the judge had to instruct the jurors they were not to regard anything that Annie Farmer alleged occurred to her as illegal sexual activity, right? So according to judicial edict in this trial, Annie Farmer was not a victim of any illegal sexual activity, right? And yet she's just I guess her job title now is survivor. She goes on CNN, MSNBC, wherever, and they call her Epstein survivor. She spoke at this rally. She was calling for justice, etc. And people never mention that, Annie Farmer, other people who spoke at this rally, press conference, they've received millions of dollars through these very generous and lax in terms of their standards for adjudicating claims, settlement funds.
By the way, you're talking about there's one of them that's got $3.2 million. We're talking about one of the.
So right. So so 2 of the 4 victims, alleged victims anyway, who testified at the Maxwell trial, were dismissed by the judge in terms of whether or not the jury could consider them to have been subjected to illegal sexual activity. One was Annie Farmer. Another one was this woman, Anushka DiGiorgio, who is a British socialite. I forget what her exact ethnicity is, but it was also declared that she was not subjected to any illegal sexual activity. And they both spoke at this press conference yesterday. And yes, Anushka DiGiorgio received millions of dollars from, over $3 million, as you mentioned, from just one settlement fund. You got to remember, when they testified at the trial and they were made to disclose by the defense counsel how much money they received from this program called the Epstein Victims Compensation Program, which was drawn from Epstein's estate once he died in August of 2019. They had to disclose how much money they got from that based on the cross-examination of the defense counsel. But later on, post 2021, even more settlement money became available from J.P. Morgan, hundreds of millions, Deutsche Bank. And so these women are almost certainly multi-millionaires, and yet the general public is instructed to see them as these downtrodden victims, right? Who are all supposed to have this eternal empathy for, even though they didn't face any illegal sexual activity, and they're multimillionaires.
Here's what's interesting to me. I love the conversation, Michael. I'm so glad you came on here, and I appreciate your work. Unfortunately, I'm out of time, but this is so fascinating because it really is, and I think you probably realize that it's a microcosm of a lot of the failures of journalism. And what you're trying to do is be very detailed with the truth. I would highly recommend the Substack piece. You have even some pictures and some video, elements in there that kind of show the inconsistencies in some of these stories. So I don't know where all of this is taking us, but I do know that you're actually doing some work on it, and it seems like you know what you're doing. And I appreciated the post yesterday. That's why I wanted to get you on. And I'm guessing this is not going away because you have voices on Capitol Hill that want it to continue. So we might have you back at some point. But Michael Tracey, follow him on the X, formerly Twitter. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
MoDOT is reporting a stall westbound 44 past the MLK Bridge. Watch for that. It's on the right shoulder. And there's an accident westbound 70 past the Rock Road. Now, this thing has been blocking the right lane, and it's left us with a slow go past the airport. We've got northbound 170 lined up, headed for Airport Road, just a little bit. It's not a parking lot. 70 westbound is fine out of downtown. It's just at the airport it's slow, and then again at Highway A. Now, 6440, that's more like moderate volume, but it's just past Kings Highway, out past McCausland, slowing again at Lindbergh. We had an accident reported eastbound 64 past 141. Some slow-moving traffic there, but out westbound looks fine. And southbound 55, just a little bit of volume at Bates. And 270 looks busy in both directions at the Clayton Road overpass, but not bad. And we look fine if you're headed into Illinois. This report brought to you by The Diamond Shop. The Diamond Shop, making St. Louis sparkle for over 100 years. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic on 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
You know, you have a situation right now with cryptocurrency and Bitcoin that you have nations and states that are making it part of their strategic reserve. So what is that all about? The Trump administration very open to the future of cryptocurrency. I want you to get to know Bitcoin Ben. Bitcoin Ben is a St. Louis guy. He was a truck driver. He became fascinated on the topic of cryptocurrency a while back. He started doing some YouTube videos. They caught on. And this guy is an amazing expert. And he has a crypto club that's coming to St. Louis, his hometown. They have some of these around the country in Nashville and Florida. There's one in Las Vegas. The Bitcoin Ben crypto clubs teach you what Bitcoin is. I learned a lot. It was like Bitcoin 101. I went out to dinner with Ben a couple of months back. I learned a lot, but there's still so much to learn. So, you know, how do you buy it? How do you store it? How do you avoid scams? All of these things will be covered with live classes and some cool event space meetups at the club, which is going to be rolled out here very, very soon. Bitcoin Ben wants everyone to have a chance at this once-in-a-lifetime generational wealth. So if you want to find out more right now, all you got to do is go to bitcoinben.io. bitcoinben.io. You will find out more about the club, about Bitcoin Ben TV, the private key capital. All this is coming this fall. bitcoinben.io to find out more today.
Mark Cox here. Join us live Thursday, September 11th at Chicken Ellie's in Eureka as we support Focus Marines Foundation. They're helping post 9/11 veterans transition to civilian life. Learn more at 971talk.com/events.
You've got a ton of equity in your home. You're sitting on a gold mine, and you could do so much with all that cash, like travel, invest it, or pay off debt, but you can't touch it unless you sell your home. But you really don't want to move. And besides, homes are sitting on the market for a long time these days. You're trapped, right? Well, not with TrueHold. With TrueHold, you can cash out your equity in as little as 30 days. And listen, you don't have to move. You can stay in the home you love as a renter. So that's TrueHold's Sell and Stay program. You cash out your entire home's value and stay put. TrueHold even covers property taxes, property insurance, and essential repairs. So imagine using that equity to travel, invest, or pay off debt and stay in your home. It's brilliant, especially in this slow market. You get an all-cash offer now by calling 1-855-300-9993. You can also visit TrueHold.com, the smarter, faster way to cash out on your home's value without moving. That's TrueHold.com.
Are you looking to hire? ZipRecruiter finds the best candidate for your job fast. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Now back to Mark Reardon, calling out the nonsense, one segment at a time. 97.1 FM Talk.
Well, we always call a lot of nonsense out on the Reardon Roundtable, and we're set for tomorrow. Jane Duker will be on the panel. By the way, Sue, she's also tasked with getting the real Oreo and Reese's combination. We had the imitation one last week, but yes, the word got out with the listeners, and these things are all over the place. David Klein, you know, producer emeritus of this show, told me that they are at the Target at Gravois Bluffs, and I need to go there actually tomorrow, so I might pick some.
I was going to say, get some.
Yeah, we're going to have to try those. But on the panel, Jane will be here at Rhodey. On her side, Sean Flower, the mayor of Eureka. Also in the 4 o'clock hour, all our fun entertainment stuff with Paul Hall. I mentioned earlier, I've watched not only the Katrina documentary, but the Catfish Unknown Number documentary, which is crazy. And if you're thinking about watching that one, Do not Google it. If you don't know anything going
no
in,
spoilers.
It's better if you don't know. Unfortunately, I kind of knew
Yeah.
a little bit, but even then I was blown away.
Wow.
But we'll talk a little bit more entertainment with Paul tomorrow, Cusimano in the 4:00 hour, Brian Kilmeade coming up at 5:00 tomorrow. Let's do this here before we get out of here on a Thursday.
Stand by. Playback ready.
Now, the audio cut of the day.
Well, candidly, there was a lot of shouting and stuff that went on today with Bobby Kennedy Jr. at a hearing in front of senators.
We are the sickest country in the world. That's why we have to fire people at the CDC. They did not do their job. You're so wrong on your facts.
You're interrupting me. And, sir, you're a charlatan. That's what you are.
I never promised that I was going to recommend products with which there is no indication.
When you said...
And I know you've taken $855,000 from pharmaceutical companies, Senator.
Did you hold up a big sign saying that you were lying when you said that?
You want me to indicate a product for which there is no clinical data? Every Republican got corporate PAC money. For
Yeah, this went on and on and on and on. And
great.
it got really, really hot. We'll talk about it on the roundtable tomorrow.
Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
On the roads, we are thinning out nicely, but there was an accident westbound 70 past the Rock Road. Now, they've moved it off to the shoulder, but there's still some slow-moving traffic in that area. Southbound 270 slowing at 70. And eastbound 64, there was an accident reported kind of just east of Clarkson. So around Timberlake Manor, but that, nope, I take that back. It's backed up to Timberlake Manor, but the accident itself is just east of 141. So a slowdown there, but then things open up. And don't slow again until 170. And still some moderate volume westbound 40 Hampton out through Hanley. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic on 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Wow, we've had a hot summer so far. Probably still got a little bit more heat coming in through the rest of August and September. Most likely, let you know, I am still here. If you guys looked up the wife looking through you at a fork, I am still here. She still loves the hell out of me because my air conditioner did not break this summer, and I did not need to call me to have it looked at or have it fixed. But if you do need your air conditioner fixed, we can get to you pretty quick. If you want a new one, somebody tells you need a new one, we can get to you really quick. Just call me, Bart Inman, one easy number, Missouri and Illinois, 314-293-2600 or bartinman.com. I almost forgot. bartinman.com. That's Bart with a B, Inman with an I.com. God bless.
That baby's gone! Cardinals fans, FanDuel Sports Network is your home of the Cardinals. That ball was mashed. And there are more ways to watch this season. Holy cow! Subscribe directly to FanDuel Sports Network to stream the Cardinals without blackouts. How about that play? Or watch through a TV provider. Incredible! Including DirecTV, Spectrum, Xfinity, Fubo, and more. He got it! Learn more at cardinals.com/TV.
Ball game! It couldn't have worked out any better for the Cardinals.
Why do the national tax resolution firms need the tiny fine print at the bottom of all their TV ads? Hi, this is Lance Story with the Lance Story Law Firm. You don't hear fast-talking disclaimers in our ads because the claims we make are 100% transparent. The Lance Story Law Firm primarily focuses on one thing, IRS problems, and we're regulated by the Bar Association, and we have a AAA rating with the Better Business Bureau. IRS issues are serious legal issues. The Lance Story Law Firm has helped thousands of clients navigate the best resolution plans, and we tell you up front exactly how much it'll cost. Tax resolution law is all we do. So before you send money to some out-of-town, high-pressure salesperson, give us a call at the Lance Story Law Firm, located right here in St. Louis. Call today to schedule your free consultation with me, 314-260-6120, or visit LanceDruryLaw.com.
The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements.
Hey, it's Mark Reardon. If you're nearing retirement or already retired, call my friends Thomas Helbig and Bob Kershaw with the Retirement Advisory Group. They'll show you how linking to the market is much safer than owning the market for your retirement savings. They're the official financial advisors of my show. Go to retirementkey.com.
KFTK FM Florissant from the Kaufman Townsley St. Louis's Injury Lawyers Studio. Call 314-500-5000.
That's 314-500-5000.
All on the free Odyssey app.
Fox Across America with Jimmy Fallon is coming up next, right here on 97.1 FM Talk.
A contentious hearing on Capitol Hill. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. As lawmakers raise questions about the ouster of the head of the CDC, Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. appears before a Senate panel.
Senator John Barrasso, the number 2 Senate Republican and a doctor himself, says he's grown concerned with Secretary Kennedy after the recent firing of the CDC director and the questioning of mRNA vaccines by the National Institutes of Health.
If we're going to make America healthy again, we can't allow public health to be undermined.
Kennedy telling the Senate Finance Committee the reason for the now former CDC director Susan Manara's dismissal was because he couldn't trust her. Manara says it was because of disagreements over vaccine policy. The secretary also touting the administration's efforts to make America healthy again, which includes removing dyes from foods.
Fox's Ryan Schmelz on Capitol Hill. The National Guard is extending its deployment in Washington, D.C. through November 30th. This comes as the D.C. Attorney General files a lawsuit against the Trump administration, arguing the deployment is an illegal military operation. An executive order to be signed by President Trump tomorrow, Fox News Digital has learned, that will restore the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War.
That is something that Congress needs to get involved with. So part of this order is ordering the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to propose a legislative solution to make the change permanent.
Fox's Peter Doocy at the White House. The president and Secretary Hegseth have both indicated recently that they wanted to change the name. An appeals court has stopped a lower court order to wind down operations at the detention center in Florida known as Alligator Alcatraz. A separate federal appeals court has rejected a bid by the Trump administration to lift a judge's order barring it from refusing to issue passports to transgender and non-binary Americans that reflect their gender identities. America is listening to Fox News.
Here's a tale of Becky. Didn't know what to do with new meds prescribed and no real cost clue.
She squinted at prices, that can't be right. Then tapped GoodRx and saw the light.
She could get a deal. Book telehealth if she feels.
Learn about those meds without any stress. That one little app does all the rest. Even my horse downloaded it. Dang, save time and money on prescriptions.
Check GoodRx. GoodRx is not insurance.
Let's go! You're still glowing, flirting, grooving. You still got it. But your immune system weakens as you age, making it harder to fight flu, pneumococcal pneumonia, RSV, and COVID-19. Vaccines are a key part of any health routine and help strengthen your immune response. Ask your doctor or pharmacist which vaccines you need. Schedule in minutes at vaxassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
I'm Elizabeth McDonald, and this is the Fox Business Report.
Stocks finishing higher with the S&P 500 scoring its 21st record close of the year as private sector hiring slowed sharply in August, pointing to labor market weakness and increasing bets that the Fed will slash interest rates when it meets in a couple of weeks. Private sector hiring showed 54,000 jobs were created in August, far less than economists were forecasting. While weekly first-time claims for unemployment benefits rose by 8,000 to 237,000. Which was above projections. On Friday morning, the Labor Department will release the key jobs report for August, which will likely carry more weight with the Fed. The Dow up 350 points, the Nasdaq higher by 210, S&P 500 up 54. Lululemon Athletic has surpassed second quarter earnings estimates, but its shares are tanking after hours on a narrow sales miss. That's your Fox Business Report. I'm Hillary Barsky, invested in you.
Most investments today feel like second jobs. Real estate, you're a landlord. Stocks, you're a day trader. Crypto, you're a full-time researcher. You've got a life to live. Your investment should help you live it. That's why more Americans are choosing gold.